Hello, you're listening to the Eric McKenna Project.
Steel.
A bladder of steel.
Feels like a camel.
Yeah. Except I have a hump right here, not in the back.
They have two humps, I thought, right? Camels
Yeah, they
have two
do.
humps.
So it depends on the type of camel.
Well, see, there you go.
My brother would get me on that one.
This is why you sit with educated people when you're not educated, because you look smart. This is why I do this show. Gentlemen, I appreciate you doing this.
For sure.
It means a lot. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this will be a good time. Took a while to get it scheduled, so I appreciate your patience.
Of course.
Doc, good to see you again. I happy to report to you I haven't lost any money yet.
None. It's been
the season's young, but I haven't lost any.
It's been a good season for heavy underdogs. Got to be honest. Been a real good season. A lot of uncertainty means underdog betting, very profitable.
Well, we're going to do some baseball talk in the second half of the show. I wanted to open up the show based upon the fact that both of you are in education. Phil, if you don't mind, just for the viewers and the listeners' sake, just to give some short background on your position at Duquesne and what you do.
Sure, yes. I've been at Duquesne University for 16 years now. Actually, I've been in higher education for 27 years. It all started at Point Park College. It became Point Park University. I was in their admissions office as a recruiter. Worked my way up to Associate Director of Admission. I was notified about a position at Duquesne University when I was not looking for a job. And
always the way it works, right?
Exactly. I looked into it and I thought, this would be the perfect fit for me, because working in admissions, you don't always get to see the students all 4 years of their time in college. So looked into the position. I thought, yep, this is right up my alley. And I'm Director of Student Services in our science school at Duquesne University. It's officially called the Bayer School of Natural and Environmental Sciences. And we have 5 undergrad majors. We have PhD programs, master's degree programs. Wow. I work with the undergraduate population.
That got to keep you young, huh?
Yes, it does. It does. Keeps me happy.
I bet.
Phil is well known on campus. Very well known. Phil's well known everywhere.
Agreed. Agreed. Okay, so what I wanted to put out there first for discussion for the three of us is we're in an era right now where life's nuts. Like the pandemic, you've been on the show. This is your third time here, and I think, is this your second visit during the pandemic? Your first appearance, was it before?
No, I think again, we're trying to figure out exactly when this was. I think the first time I came was, I believe, before. This is I measure my life in baseball, so I believe the first visit was before the 2020 baseball season began. So maybe like May of 2020. Okay. So we were in, a couple months in.
Okay.
And then I believe, my condolences, the A's had just lost on the second trip, so I want to say like October of 2020.
That's a regular, yearly occurrence now, isn't it? I'm sorry to say.
I have Pirate season tickets. I'm used to losing, man.
At least they're making the playoffs.
That's what I mean. When you said they lost the playoff game, that's pretty much a regular occurrence. Yes, welcome to my world.
It's an homage to losing when you bring the Kansas City A's hat.
But hopefully that brings luck. Hopefully that brings luck.
I think that's what you want to bring if you're looking to win.
Yes. The pandemic is changed everything, and obviously either it has changed education going forward, or is it more of a blip? Do you think that it's going to look different in the higher education world going forward, or do you think we're going to look back on this as a year to 2 year kind of, not even a correction, just something that happened and then we just got on with it, things returned to normal?
I see it 2 ways. Number one, we're looking forward to being back in the classroom in the fall.
Okay.
Teaching in person, it's what we're meant to do. But when you look at conferences, meetings, travel, a lot of that can still take place on Teams or on Zoom. And you're saving yourself from travel costs, those types of things, time, everybody's busy in higher education. So I see where Teams and Zoom will still exist. But, as far as the students are concerned, They're meant to be in the classroom. They're meant to learn in person. In-person instruction is so important for no matter what their major is.
Right.
Yeah, it's in person, face to face. Online's no substitute. Ever since I started at Duquesne, I think I just finished my 12th year at Duquesne, and ever since it started, there's always this specter of, massive online courses or online education as being a threat to traditional college, in person as we know it. And all my colleagues, both at Duquesne University and elsewhere that I communicate with, the overwhelming kind of conclusion of the last year is, well, we know really at the end of the day, as it played out this last year, online education doesn't seem to be a massive threat to face-to-face. There's a place for it. There's a place for an online component, certainly. But students, all the ones I talked to, all the ones I interacted with, they want to be face-to-face. And, when they express that and it's heartfelt, I try to come right back at them and say, we want it just as bad as you do.
Yeah.
We want to be face-to-face and that interaction and the spontaneous challenging and the debate and all of that. That's education. That's where you learn to think. And it's just online just doesn't, you could try and do it as best you can. I had my kids write a lot. And try to interact with each other and write responses. The best I could to try and get back and forth, but there's really no good substitute for just spontaneous face-to-face, back and forth, make them argue with each other.
The type of mindset it takes to really do purely online education is only a small percent of the population, I'm guessing. It really has that analytical... They're really super,
and not all subjects.
I don't know.
It's different across subjects too. I think there are some subjects that can lend themselves a little bit better to online.
Give me an example. What would you guess?
I would. That's a good question. I have one of my son's friends from daycare. She's a math professor at Duquesne, and I would always thought math would be really, really hard to teach online. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is, but that was like kind of the first thing that came to mind when all this started. It was like, wow, she's got to try and handle this online.
Okay.
Economics, I think for like the straight theory of it is not too bad online. So when I would lecture, I've got my iPad kind of right there, and that serves as a whiteboard, so I can kind of talk over the whiteboard. So doing like international trade theory, I didn't find to be that bad. Certainly not the back and forth that we have in person in the discussion of the models, but just the delivery of the material, I thought was all right. So my international class is half trade theory and half development. And when it came to development, that's a lot of back and forth. And it's really hard to foster that discussion online. You could have people chime in and answer questions, but when we're in person, there's all these social cues of, I'm kind of winding up my point and you could jump right in, and like Phil's winding up his point and I could jump right in. There's all these social cues that are there that when you go online, it's not much, but it's like a quarter of a second or half a second. But even that just puts such a blockade on the back and forth. It's frustrating because the kids, they want the back and forth. It's just Zoom's tough. It's just tough. It's just hard.
Zoom is, it's not a favorite of mine, I'll tell you that.
I mean, it is what it is. Yeah. It's not Zoom's fault. It's just, it is what it is,
Yeah, well, we're not, I don't think we're ready technology-wise to do what we tried to do. We did our best during the pandemic to use online, but I don't think the technology's there where we have really honest, real-time, fluid, high-definition, fantastic audio, and it's that latency.
The latency is not even much, but it just makes you realize how low it has to be in order for it to work.
Yeah.
And I always saw it as like just a substitute or an alternative to the face-to-face interaction, because nothing will ever substitute that, as I said earlier. But as far as like degrees that you can earn online, you see a lot of ads all the time for Arizona State. They have a massive online campaign that they run on TV.
Like Southern New Hampshire, I think.
New Hampshire. There are certain degrees you can certainly earn online. Master's degrees, maybe degrees in leadership, programs of study like that. I think that are easier.
Are those accredited schools?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
It takes a certain kind of person that I think wired a certain way that can enter into that environment and complete it completely online. And we saw how failed it is by requiring secondary education.
Yes.
Children.
And that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine. I've said it multiple times on here, my friend. My kids are like Phil. I have children that are 18 and 20, had they been,
My son was, when we started last fall, he started kindergarten last fall, and it was 2 days a week like he went Tuesday, Friday, and the other 3 days were on the iPad. And God bless his teacher for getting 15 kindergartners to pay attention on an iPad. That's remarkable. Very, very fortunate that since about mid-October, he's been 5 days a week in person, which is just, it's night and day.
I can't even imagine.
It's been a year. It's been a year.
I feel for everybody. I feel for the families, the parents, their children, the teachers.
Yeah.
Because everybody had to adapt.
Yeah.
Everybody.
And Jamie and I, we're lucky because we both have, broadly speaking, pretty flexible jobs. And we always say to each other, we're handling this as we can. But like we always say, like, what if we had real jobs? Like, what if we always say, like, what if we had real jobs? And how do you,
without flexibility, I don't know how that would go.
It's unreal.
I don't know how they did it. I had Tia Marshall on a podcast about 4 months ago, and she is an elementary school teacher. She's a pre-K teacher in Beaver Falls.
Okay.
So, she's got a challenging job to begin with, but then now you throw a pandemic on top of that, and just hearing how those teachers in the elementary just had to really reinvent their, not just their curriculum, but they reinvented themselves as teachers. They had to.
They didn't have a choice. They didn't have a choice.
I think as a society, I don't think society as a whole really puts much thought into what they have gone through.
No, they don't, and I agree. Right, I do agree.
That's a seismic. That would have to be a seismic change. You're at that level with kindergarten, even up to maybe to third grade. You're more than just a teacher. You're like a guardian to some degree for those
a role model.
6, 8, yeah, and you're corralling them, and a lot of high energy kids there. And now you're trying to work with these parents who have a high energy kid on the other side of the tablet.
Right.
I can't even begin to imagine.
Yeah, no, neither can I.
Yeah, it's God bless them. And I guess this just last week was Teachers Week.
National Teacher Appreciation Week. Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like that kind of came and went, and almost unrecognized. We only knew about it because we have friends who are teachers. You have kids in school. And the things that they were doing, they had food trucks at Bond Mead Elementary, for example, for the teachers. I thought that was pretty cool.
They got all sorts of stuff at my son's school, and they deserve all that and more.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
No doubt.
On the broader context, do you feel that we're going to look back at this from an educational standpoint? I'm talking from kindergarten all the way through even higher education. Are we going to look back on this as a blip in history, or is this going to be some kind of change, whether it's seismic or whether it's some kind of subtle change that changes the way we handle education going forward? Do you think there's going to be any changes out of here, or this is just something that happened and we're just going to get on with it?
I think they're going to try, to be honest, at least from what Duquesne's been telling us, I think they're going to try and take a step back and parse from these last, 14 months and see what could be kept that maybe was an improvement on some margins somehow moving forward.
Are there any? I
don't think. We now it's a sunk cost fallacy, but there's all this effort and all of this expenditure into having all this online capability now.
Okay.
That is there some way to wrap that in moving forward that could be value added? I mean, on the one hand, for me, I would want nothing more personally than to just be like, let's just go back to January 2020 when we started our semester, face to face. Let's get after it like we do and like we've always done. But I think it would be at least a little ignorant to not at least consider the possibility of something like this, maybe on the margin, somehow making the class experience a little bit better somehow.
Okay.
I don't have any answers for you. I've been thinking about that myself. I think Duquesne's thinking about it as well. I have this, and maybe this is famous last words, but I have this feeling that the fall, students, so Duquesne, we talked about this before when I was here, but Duquesne had this high flex model that if you were teaching in person, you had give or take 40% capacity of your class, and so you have these cohorts that can show up if they want. And what ended up happening is a lot of the kids just did it online, even if it was their cohort day.
Right.
We'd only get a couple kids showing up to classes.
Right.
I just have this sense that some version of that's going to be moving forward, that if a student for whatever reason doesn't want to show up, they're going to need to be accommodated by online. I'm not a huge fan of that. I just have a sense that that's going to be moving forward. Phil, what do you think?
I think you're 100% right. I really do. I know there's going to be a couple of students who may not be able to be in person, and we'll continue with that high flex model, which basically is a large flat screen television in the classroom and a camera right in front of the podium. And you have, like Matt said, 40% of your enrollment for your class in person, and they take turns coming in and out, and the rest of them on the flat screen on Zoom.
Would it be elective going forward? Like, do you see an environment where that'll be an elective decision by the student? They're either going to attend or not, or they're going to be a schedule that you're not attending this day and you're going to be.
I just see it's now been established that if students, for health reasons, don't want to be physically be in a classroom, the university's allowed that. And I think once you've allowed that, and I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing,
right?
Once they've allowed that, I think that's a hard position to move away from.
We have to accommodate those students, right? And that's okay.
Is that out of fear that they're because that's the other part of this question is going to be, can we, certainly on the broader sense in society, can we create a new norm? Or in education, is there going to be a period of time where we're going to have to accommodate for people's fears, for those who are not ready or comfortable to get back to quote unquote normal education?
I mean, I just, from the university's perspective, I mean, liability has to play a big role in that, right? I mean, if a student comes back and says, I didn't feel comfortable going to a classroom, I felt I might get sick, you didn't accommodate that and I got sick. I just think that's just a big meatball hanging out there.
I'm prepared for that scenario myself. Prepared for the class I have.
I need to think through how to deal with that.
Right. I just am. I know that there's going to be a couple students who will not be comfortable being in person. And that's fine. I will accommodate whoever needs to be accommodated. I'll work with those students.
Oh, I get that.
Yeah,
that's a professional educator in you, though.
And if there's only two of them, I can teach them outside of that allotted time, 3:05 to 4:20 p.m. When I teach on Thursday afternoons, we can do separate Zoom sessions. Office hours. Whatever the case is.
Yeah,
I'll accommodate them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be harder for me to do that, but I mean, it's something that needs to be thought about, and it's. We've got 3.5 months to.
We have some time to figure this out.
We'll figure it out.
Yes.
I guess that's the part of the pandemic. None of us, speaking on the broader context, we can't predict anything. We want to, prediction helps us feel more comfortable if we believe in it, of course, but we just don't know what it's going to look like. Last year was 14 days to flatten the curve.
Of course.
Which then that turned into
14
long
months.
time. Right.
The Pistols reunion tour.
Yet to be determined.
Right.
But you heard it here first, friends. Sorry.
I heard it on Facebook first.
Me too. I don't know who said that. Now you got me all messed up, Bill. Great job.
Sorry.
We predict to feel more comfortable with what's ahead, but it's impossible to predict. I mean, in the music business, really, the concerts were canceled last year,
right?
But we're going to cancel until 21, and we're going to resume all these big national tours and all this stuff. And as you can see, none of that really, to this point, has really started, even in the southern states.
There's a trickle a little bit here and there, but yeah,
and
really
things are somewhat scheduled for the fall. But until it actually happens, I don't know that's going to happen.
Did you get your Genesis tickets, Eric?
Who?
Genesis?
I don't even know who they are, to be honest with you. They had that bald-headed drummer guy, I think. He's got a song, Easy Lover or something, with Philip Bailey. Or I don't
They were both named Phil. Phil Collins and Philip Bailey.
I don't know who they are. But the reality is, I think that we want to try to predict the futures to give us some levels of comfort. And it's got to be hard in your line of work.
Well, you brought up, in my opinion, a perfect example. Concerts. How are they going to play out? How many people will go to an indoor concert now that we're allowed to be indoors again come May 31st in Pennsylvania? Just you have to wear a mask. And until we're at 70% vaccination for our population, then maybe the mask mandate will be removed.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the prime example. The rock concerts, the symphonies, the Broadway shows.
Sporting events.
Well, I was thinking baseball outdoors. It's a different story.
The hockey,
but
basketball.
hockey, basketball,
badminton,
pickleball.
I mean, Duquesne just had graduation, and some of the schools were at the new arena they built on campus, and some of the schools were at PPG.
Yeah.
And the business school was at PPG, and even then, it was graduates had 2 guests, mind you, the whole of PPG.
Right.
2 guests per graduate, and the faculty couldn't have any guests.
No, we
Not
weren't
that the
there.
faculty has guests, but yeah, that's a 18,000 seat arena.
Yeah.
That's the degree. Everyone in masks, obviously. That's the degree to which indoor activity with 50% of the population vaccinated. That's where we're at.
Right.
So in May of 2021 now, what does classrooms look like at Duquesne? Are they people spread out? Is there social distancing and
Yes.
so there's assigned seating, and how's that
Yeah, there'll
work?
be like an X, like a red X. You can't sit in this seat, and then like a green, piece of tape. You can sit here.
Okay.
Pretty much.
In Rockwell, they have these little cutout people they put in the seats that you can't sit in.
Are you serious?
A colleague of mine was half joking, but the more
That would be outstanding.
a colleague of mine had this idea. He said,
That's crazy.
he said we should sell ad space on the little people.
I think that was
would've
a
been a
missed.
great
I was
idea.
saying that's been a missed opportunity
Yes.
in the ball. Hey, settle the score for me. Wasn't Oakland the first stadium in MLB to have the cutouts? Weren't we first?
It could be.
I think we were first.
It could be.
I gotta look that up.
Was it also in Oakland where the large teddy bear was hit by a line drive foul ball?
That guy got blasted. Yeah, I remember
and they kept
that.
showing it in slow motion. Ba-doom, ba-doom.
Yeah.
We're gonna look back on these
I
2
don't think
years, guys.
did the Pirates do cutouts? I don't think they did they?
If they did, they go. I like everything pirate. It was done
It's
haphazardly.
done too cheap.
And yeah,
Sorry.
they used toilet paper.
I feel like they might have had cutouts, but they weren't like behind home plate, so you didn't see them that much. Like the camera had to pan over to them. I think.
First time I
quote me on
saw
that,
something
though.
like that, first time I saw that was the very beginning when they resumed play, and I was watching an A's game, and I'm like, there's people in the stands. I was like trying to wake my wife up, like, hey, wake up, there's people in the stands up there. And she wakes up, it's a night game. She's like, what do you want? I go, look, there are people in the stands in Oakland. I mean, there must not be a pandemic out there. Something's going on. And she's looking, and she goes, they're not real. She goes back to bed. I'm like, they're not real. Yeah,
They
okay.
also, in 2020, baseball was tinkering with having like computer generated fans.
They did that in some sports,
Had some
didn't they?
glitches, and it was really funny. Like if you go look at the glitches, because like people tracking fly balls or like going into the people. It's pretty funny.
They tried it though. I thought someone did the Yankees
remember
try
that.
that?
It was a couple places. It was
a couple or the California Angels. One
could
of
have
the,
been. There were a
It was
handful of places.
horrific.
Yeah, it was.
It was on
Well,
the-
it was. I like if it's. You'd almost rather it be like 50% good. Because if
Yeah.
it's like 90% good, then it's just frustrating. But if it's 50% good, then it's funny, right? I think you want it to be like. Yeah, you don't want it to be like almost there. Because if it's almost there, you're like, God, it could
You'll
be
start
like
focusing
I know,
on it, like,
but if
you
it's
know.
horrible, it's just it's the best.
If you remember, South Korea, I think, was the first country for sporting events that had the cutouts. I think it was baseball. We were watching Korean baseball on ESPN.
Oh,
they had
so-
like teddy bears and stuff behind home
They had
plate,
teddy
though.
bears, they had cutouts, and then it was a soccer team
That's crazy.
that actually had blow-up dolls in the
Oh, you
stands.
gotta be kidding me.
I swear to God. And they were fined for that. So,
Oh, that probably would have been Arsenal, right? Sorry again. But back to the education thing. You are in classrooms that have designated seating, so
Correct.
Yes.
and you're limited now. Is it about a third capacity?
40%, but sometimes if you're in a large lecture hall, you could tinker it around a little bit with the capacity, but 40% is the rule of thumb.
right.
How crazy was the campus to be on over the past year? Like just seeing, like it was. I'm sure it wasn't a ghost town, but it had to have been just kind of like a ghost town.
I mean,
It was depressing to me. You
Yes.
know, it really, really was not Duquesne University as far as I was concerned at all. You know, it was bad.
My daughter's in childcare on campus, so I'm on campus 4 days a week. So I was in most of the year, to be honest with you, and at least once or twice a week, I would see literally nobody when I was, up the elevator to my office, teaching from my office because I did online this year, and not seeing anyone. So yeah, it's it's depressing, but in like a subconscious way. Like I don't walk around being like, man, I'm really sad. But all of a sudden, I think after a couple weeks or a month, it just like wears on you that it's
empty buildings.
Yeah,
very few students.
It just makes you realize how much in your life it's important to have these, like, not only your friends, but these like other people that you wouldn't necessarily call your friends, but acquaintances, or like that substrata of life, like of interaction.
Your sphere.
That you interact with. And that
right.
was, Phil and I probably populate the Red Ring on campus a little bit too often, but like the people that work there that you're friends with that I would never think to call and say hi, but I'd see them a couple times a week, that just become part of your life. And everyone, this isn't just us, I mean, it's everybody that's been living through this, just had that aspect of your life just torn away from you. And it's, at some level, it's traumatic. It is.
Yeah. I know for me, what was really strange was once we were permitted to work again, being the nature of how I work, it's usually one-on-one, or me and my clients, a couple of them, and that interaction of viewing properties and being in close proximity to each other. And the only time I really got in a formal setting is if I was at a closing, generally, because all of our meetings, our broker meetings, were done. There was no more in-person broker meetings. Everything was remote. But being masked up and then trying to maneuver a house and keep my distance from my clients, and then read their level of hesitation and fear, and again, then going home and stopping at a Sheets and seeing everybody gorked out of their minds, and just, it was really like living in a completely different land.
In your field, you're looking at body language, your customers. And when that mask is on, that takes away a lot of that facial expression you can't read. It's very impossible.
Yeah, and imagine teaching's got to be tough like that too. If you lose the facial expressions, you lose a part of the conversation.
You do.
You do, for sure.
And there's always, teaching is, part performance, and so reading how, you can sense when things are going well. You can sense there's just a feeling you get from just the years of teaching of when you're going through material, and then there's just a feeling from the group, it's just not sticking, so we got to find a different way, or we got to find a way to present this material better. You just get that sense, just, you don't even know where it comes from, but it's just, we've done it for so long, you just get this sense of when things are going well or not. And now when everything's online, I can't, I'm going through my material and I'm doing my thing, but there's very little back and forth. I can't read, the facial expressions. You can tell when half the class is just kind of giving you one of those.
Absolutely.
And so you need to go back, and you got to,
that's part of the human experience.
It is.
The communication experience.
And what's hard too is most of these students have their cameras off. Okay. So you have to ask yourself, are they even there? Did they sign on just to go do whatever in their room?
I'm sure the high school teachers really struggle with that.
Probably.
I would think, because you're at that age now where you have that little level of independence, and
But I have a tendency to pick on students and to call on them, just to make sure they're paying attention.
Sure.
So
that's the way to get past that, right?
Exactly. So it was very strategic this time around too. During the pandemic, I'll call in student X and make sure that they're actually paying attention, and it'll be like that 3 or 4 second delay. Oh, hey, Mr. Clarke,
That's great.
Right.
That's great. Yeah. Again, teaching, I don't know how you did it. I know the struggles in the corporate world, and I'm glad that I'm no longer in corporate America, because I couldn't. What I loved about my corporate life was the interaction, and what I missed when I became an entrepreneur and did the guitar thing, I lost all of those social interactions I had, and I kind of missed that.
Right.
So I can imagine, let's say you had a career of 15, 20, 30 years of that, very similar to what you probably experienced on campus there. You're seeing all those people, and then almost being afraid to be around them because, the bug, you're afraid of the bug.
I know. I was reading an article a little while back about like large banks, like big international banks, and all their new hires that have, for the last year, have been working remotely.
Right.
Aren't like physically, like the traders, let's say, like they're not physically at the trade desk where they kind of pick up how everyone else does it. They're wondering if this like cohort of new hires at those banks are kind of like going to be set astray, like career-wise, because they don't have that, they're not around the older traders to just kind of see how it goes.
Great point.
Well, that experience.
That's
That's how
point.
you get a lot of your experience.
That's a great point.
Right.
I was talking to 2 newer agents that started actually during the pandemic.
Jeez.
Apparently, I didn't know this was a thing, but apparently people have been bored during the pandemic. I wasn't, but a lot of people have been.
Really?
And a lot of people got the real estate license as something to do.
Guess those people didn't have young kids.
Yes. Well, the market's flooded right now with agents that are not sure they want to be in this business, that are trying it out, which is perfectly fine. I'm not discouraging that. But in this crazy market, it's making for some very interesting and tough going for newer agents. In talking to a few of them, they are lamenting exactly what we discussed, that it's hard to read a client or get the one agent made a comment to me, goes, well, how's this showing thing supposed to work? Like, I can't tell if the client really likes the property or not. And I'm like, well, you're asking me. I'm struggling with the same damn thing.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
You only get to see like their eyes light up if they really like the property.
Well, and sometimes I don't know if their eyes get big. Are they happy or are they horrified?
Oh my gosh, this is what you brought me to see.
I really don't know. And it's in the beginning. Do you feel that from what you see with students, are people getting more comfortable? Are you seeing? Not that we're becoming more lax in our requirements, but things are opening up a little bit. And do you see or feel any of that?
I think people just kind of got used to the current situation, where, yes, I need to be in lab in person. Okay. However, I'll be taking the rest of my classes from my dorm room or from my apartment, or just somewhere on campus. You can just sit wherever you want and take your class online. But I sense,
you think students like that? Do you think there's do you think there's any like proportion or percentage of students or sizable percentage of students that actually likes remote learning?
I don't think so on my end. No.
I mean, these students had that option for remote learning before all of this, if that's what they wanted. If they wanted an online experience, they could have pursued that.
Okay.
My experience, in at least talking with the kids that I have over the last year, that I kind of had, maybe your experience is the same, Phil. I kind of had this small cadre of students that would listen to my lectures, and then they would kind of either stay afterwards or arrange for like separate Zoom meetings to just kind of have a face-to-face and just go over the material. And, whenever we were done talking about class, just trying to, empathize with them and just know their experience and just kind of be whatever you can for those students. And they just, they had, it was like they had the before college and now they've got the after college, and it's the whole mix together that I think is kind of wearing on them. So it's not just the online classes, but it's the my sorority can't meet up and do events. And,
right, absolutely. The college experience.
It's the whole experience, of which classes are an important part of that, but the other stuff's really important for them too. And they miss that. I mean, several students, I can imagine, you could see it on their faces. They're just exhausted from dealing with the new normal for them.
Zoom fatigue was a big thing for sure. There's no question about that.
I feel like they
students.
could. I feel like they could. This is speculation, but I feel like they could handle the Zoom if the rest was there.
Right.
Like, that's a weird world, obviously, but like if it was the Zoom experience,
but they still had their social
they
stuff.
Their other stuff too that balances out, and that's important stuff. Like that's important. It's part of crafting who you are and moving forward. And they didn't have any of that, and then they had all this new stuff, all this online, and like I felt for them. I really did.
See, in like what Matt was talking about, the student organizations, none of them could meet in person. The sororities, the fraternities, none of them could have their meetings in person. They couldn't do any philanthropy. They had a tough time this year. I do serve as an advisor to one of the sororities on campus, and I know our student organizations very well within the Bear School at Duquesne, and they're not even touching what they should have been doing this year.
Wow, it's that bad.
From the student perspective, I think so, yes. And for me, for personally speaking, I really miss that student engagement in the classroom.
Yes.
And as my role as an administrator, meeting with students on Zoom, yes, I got to see them, but I wasn't in person with them. And sometimes those meetings matter much more when they're in person. than if you're on a Zoom call.
I didn't realize, at least me personally, I knew I liked teaching. I love teaching. Teaching's the best part of the job.
Sure.
I just didn't realize like how much the interaction with the students was really foundational to the enjoyment of teaching.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm pretty high energy when I lecture, and I'm all over the place around the classroom, and you know, I'm exhausted when I'm done, but it's like a fulfillment of that was great, and it's a different kind of tired when you're done lecturing online.
Is it an exchange? Is like, I mean, like when you're teaching in person, is that exercise you go through and you're exhausted, but it's fulfilling. It's because it's the exchange of ideas,
it is.
And you see the enlightenment, then they get it, right?
The enjoyment of the back and forth and the challenging them and them challenging you.
Right.
It's just, that's what I signed up for. I've got the best job in the world. That's what I signed up for. It's great, and I love that, and the teaching's great. I mean, I love the research I do too, but teaching is what I really enjoy doing. And it was just, man, it just, all of that was stripped away when you do the online. I did as best I could with my upper division classes, sports econ and international, to get some back and forth. And there were better days and there were worse days, so back and forth. The nice parts actually are when the lecture was done and you'd have maybe 8 or 10 students just kind of hanging out afterwards and just going back and forth with each other, which was good. But again, not comparable to in the classroom.
So, Phil, we were talking a little bit before the doc got here. The
doc.
I hate that phrase, by the way, but that's all right.
You shouldn't have told me that.
Yeah, that's all I'm going to hear now.
No, I won't do that to you. I won't do it to you. That's good.
He's going to be a doctor here pretty soon, too, so you're going to have to address him the same way.
Don't worry, I will.
Give me about 2 more years, I'll be done. So
awesome. The skepticism that is coming from the public and from the media houses right now, or some media houses, downplaying the importance of college and using the pandemic opportunities as an opportunity to strengthen that argument in their thoughts. Meaning that the society's crazy right now, obviously, but the landscape for business is changing, and questioning whether higher education is needed. Is it worth the money? Looking at it from a P&L standpoint, for those who can do that, it doesn't make sense anymore. If you have somebody that would enter into that discussion in your sphere, and you decide to take on that discussion, what would your not rebuttal, but what would your response be to somebody that's concerned that it's just not worth the price anymore?
I mean, first off, if someone comes to you with that, I'd congratulate them for at least thinking about it in terms of costs and benefits, because that's the first step, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I'd lay it out like this. We could come up with a cost for college, right? There exists some cost that would make it worthwhile for everybody. Maybe it's $1, right? We could also come up with a cost, okay, that would make it worthwhile for nobody. Like, let's say it's $1 trillion to go to college. Just come up with some number, right? So you got to figure out, where you fall kind of on that spectrum of, from impossible to everybody.
Right.
And, the numbers say, people have run these numbers. This isn't like a new question for today, right? Broadly speaking, if you look at the numbers, college is a very good deal for the vast majority of people that go to college. Majors matter, what you study matters, how long you go to school, what the price is. I mean, all that matters. At the end of the day, college is a very good deal for the vast, vast majority of people that go.
And we were talking earlier too about the return on investment. What's at the end of the road for you as a student who's graduating. We just had commencement yesterday, and for us in the sciences, the majority of our students are going on to graduate school, they're going to medical school, or they're taking a gap year to study for the MCAT and maybe get some more time working in a hospital or whatever to up their resume. But we're seeing the results for these students. They are moving on to prestigious universities for graduate education, for professional school. Some go straight into industry, So I didn't see anything lack in that sense, from this past year. We have. I don't know the numbers yet. I haven't seen all the surveys yet, but I know of at least 5 or 6 of our biology students who are going straight to either medical school or veterinary school this fall.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's very, very good. I don't know how they did interviews. I don't know how they went through that process going through a pandemic.
Right.
Especially for medical school. And I do know of a number of our students who are going on to graduate school.
Right.
So
I think the complaint generally, I think, comes from people who, when they think of general majors, like your generalized marketing, your generalized management, and which you'll see, I think, oftentimes skewed on television with athletes and some of the big schools as general studies, that gets lumped into a bucket, and people say, well, it's just a typical management degree, and they're looking at that as saying, well, what is that really helping? Well, would you not agree, on the converse, if you don't have a game plan going into it, if the student doesn't take ownership in their own future, and it's just the parents deciding what they're going to do, and the student's not bought in anything, or they just don't really have an idea of their direction, then that's the contributor to the problem.
Yes.
Because you're just, that generalized study is what it is, but you're right, it's not focused on there can't be a return if there really isn't any end game.
Right.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean,
that's a responsibility of the student.
Oh, it's a two-way
college
street.
is what you make out of it.
It's
Absolutely.
a two-way street. There's no question about that. When I talk to students, I sometimes meet them as prospective students or students who've just been accepted with their parents in my office. Of course, I'm talking before the pandemic. We talk about these things. We give them information on what our alumni are doing. We give them information on the curriculum. You have to know what you're studying. You have to be able to dive into the curriculum and embrace it. I talk about that in the class I teach. Whichever lesson it is. Embracing your major, embracing the core classes, which we now call the Bridges curriculum at Duquesne University. Mm-hmm. Those can be pretty important. We have to offer them. It's state law. But at the same time, I do see benefit in students who are taking, a philosophy class, a history class, anything that fits in our Bridges curriculum. Because depending on how it's taught, depending on what the content is, the student can really benefit from that. And that's the overall higher education experience in that part of the curriculum, but it's in your major.
Right. Right.
And Matt can talk much more about the economics major at Duquesne University and the importance of all those courses that leads that student to whatever they end up doing.
I always like it. So I was upper division and lower division classes. So we've got principles micro and principles macro, and all of us teach different upper division classes. And I always like it when I encounter a really good student at the principals level, usually sophomores at the business school, and I come to the office and talking about class or whatever, and we just start bullshitting and just say I teach some other upper division courses. Would love to have you in the class, and maybe half the time, I don't know, but not all the time, but like more, not like never. Would love for you to take my class. Oh, I don't have any room in my schedule. Like I've planned out what I'm taking the whole, like it's always like,
right.
You are, I'll be perfectly honest. I'm like, you're miles ahead of where I was at your age. I always like when people complain about current college students, because I'm like, you must not deal with current college students because they're really, really good. They're really good.
They are
very good.
They're very,
so
very
what,
good.
why do you think there is that misconception out there in the generalized public? Not completely, but in certain segments of the public, there is sounds like a misconception of what I mean,
you could find duds in any section of the population. I mean, I'm not saying that it's 100%, but the vast majority of students that I get to deal with at Duquesne, they're a pleasure to deal with. They're an absolute joy. They're very, very good, and it's
they're amazing. They're phenomenal.
They could, and I didn't even think of it in these terms until years ago. I was at a graduation, and the valedictorian was speaking, and I remember I had her in class, and she said something to the effect, I'm going to mingle her words, but she said something to the effect of, our generation, we're able to, do our classes. They take like 5 or 6 classes, which when I was in college, I only ever took 4. That's just how it worked. Right. 5 or 6 classes, and we could be handling social media, and we could be handling this and handling that. And I never really thought of it in those terms. I'm like, they are just task managers. They're juggling everything at once,
Time
and
management.
they do it very well, all
Yes, they do.
considered. So
Yes,
it's
they
impressive.
do.
They're impressive kids, and it's a adage for teaching, but you make the hurdle higher and they jump higher. They're impressive kids.
They're go-getters. They're eager. They're eager to learn. They're eager to be involved in research.
See, the public needs to hear more of this.
Well, this is what
Again,
we do
it's
at
not
Duquesne.
It's not 100%. You're going to have duds everywhere.
Of course. But I mean,
the vast
more
majority, in my experience, at
positivity.
Duquesne University.
Well,
very,
we're blessed.
Very good kids.
We are
Very.
blessed at Duquesne. not just Matt and I, but all the faculty, all the staff, to have such talented students and a good number of talented students who are enrolled at Duquesne. I'm not saying they're all the same. There are some that are, maybe more driven than others,
Right.
and that's going to happen at any university. But I say in the sciences, the vast majority of our students are certainly driven. They care about their future. They want to be able to be successful, however they define success, but they want it, and they work hard for it. Nothing's handed to them.
Yeah.
Nothing's handed to these students. They work hard. They earn what they get.
Right. So my perspective, and Phil knows this, Matt, didn't call him Doc.
There we go.
See, I remembered.
I appreciate that.
My journey in life has been interesting. A lot of times, and it's very flattering, but when I'm in mixed company, or whether I'm in whether a business setting or a group of friends, the assumption is that I'm a college-educated person in a dynamic. I get this all the time, and I didn't. I barely got out of high school.
Well, you're an A's fan, so you have to be smart.
Well, there you go. That explains it. See, that explains it. But I have had a lot of challenges in my career, and it's been exceptionally hard at times, and it's been more difficult for me in certain instances because I did not have that paper. I didn't have that accomplishment.
Did you find that was like a restraint to you over the course of your career?
Okay, yeah. So at times,
Really?
early on, it made me, because of the way I'm wired, and that's a gift from God. That's nothing that I created. Either wired that way, I think, or you're not. I viewed it as a challenge. Like, I can do what they're doing on this job. They have higher credentials than me, but I can even be better than them. So that made me rise to the occasion. But it was a harder road for me, and I was bypassed in corporate America numerous times for positions that I knew I could have excelled at because I didn't have that, and but I recognized it, and I got through it and did some entrepreneurial things. It worked out for me. The point is, the reason I share that is it was so important when I wanted to speak with both of my children. Why my wish for both of them was that they get degrees for two reasons. The first is I do think it makes you more competitive with your peers, especially when you're younger entering the workforce, right? The other thing was what I did not get, which I think I would have loved about the educational experience, is the actual education, because my mind is just really curious. But it was that ultimate feeling of accomplishment at an early age. I got feelings of accomplishment later in life, which have served me well, I think. But early on, in my 20s, I was working real hard and trying to compete with people that were, degreed. But that was much harder than I think that journey would have had to have been, because I didn't prove even to myself that I could stick with a program, accomplishment, gain that confidence from that accomplishment. And I think that, I don't know, and maybe that's part of your discussion with potential students and young students, but I think that's often never discussed in conversations that I'm part of, is that personal confidence that comes with accomplishing the degree, getting that diploma, and what that does for the psyche. It's I think it's huge.
Right.
In terms of like a long-term accomplishment, it's not like I set out to mow the lawn today and I accomplished that. It's like something that's, it gives you a little more confidence in terms of, okay, this is my first job, in 2 years, I think I could be here. And so it gives you that, I've done something that's taken me 4 years. I could do something that's 2 years.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Right. Well, and I guess I just haven't thought of it that way, or
I've not thought of it like that either.
And maybe I did when I was in my 20s, but now that I'm in my early 50s, showing my age, it's just something I did in the past, and I'm looking toward, as you said earlier, finishing a PhD, which I should be done with it in a couple of years. But that is a different story. We're not going to go there.
So, Eric, actually, PhD defenses are public, so we have the opportunity to go and grill him as hard as we want if you like.
Oh,
that'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Make sure you read up on media ecology then. So.
Oh no, you're going to answer econ questions.
Oh, of course. Something not good.
I'll just go and watch that. That's good enough for me. I just want to go and observe that.
I'll be prepared to talk about Karl Marx then. So.
No, I said economics.
It's going to be. That'll end up being a vicious debate over there then.
No. But anyway, going back to your point though, I just I think that, you know, a person is accomplished based on their definition of accomplishment.
Okay.
How happy they are. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Hard to explain that to a 20-year-old, though, you know?
It is. But we know that as everyone says,
yeah.
as we get older, we become wiser, you know.
Mature, I like to say.
Mature. I, you know, was far from that when I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
You know, to be honest with you. But I remember, you know, when I did graduate from college, I was happy. I'm like, I got this 4-year degree. What am I going to do with it? You know, I didn't want to go into the field of journalism. That was my undergraduate degree. But fortunately, I was hired right away to work at Point Park University. Back then, Point Park College, to work in the admissions office. Like, okay, it's a job. I've got benefits. Wow, I have benefits, my own benefits.
It was the 80s.
Right. Yeah, in this case, the 90s, you know. But I just ran with it. And it was actually a natural thing for me to do, you know, because I am a people person.
Yeah.
I enjoy being around people. I enjoy talking about college. I enjoy talking about college experiences. I enjoy talking about success stories of our students who've, you know, become whatever they're doing today. I mean, I'm very proud of those people. That's the audience I'm most proud of, you know. So, and it was an easy thing for me to do, to be honest with you. It just kind of came natural, you know. And it kind of rolled into my career in higher education, you know, which I didn't plan to do. I didn't go to college to study higher education. I went to college to get a degree in journalism and to be a writer.
Right, but that's more to my point, though. And again, it's different, obviously, with very specialized degrees. Often, you know, you get an economics major that's a specialized interest there. The sciences of medicine, that's a specialized interest. But when you have more generalized majors, the value might not be knowing the absolute direction of where the child's going, the young adult's going, but it's that accomplishment. Right. You know, that's the thing, and that's what I tried to convey to my kids. I said, listen, even if you're wavering on what you want to do, it's the degree of accomplishment, it's that ticket oftentimes in a competitive job circumstance that you'll get it. Don't go the route I went. My route was lucky because I was, you know, I quit college in the mid 80s, and you know, and Reagan was great for a lot of things, but in this area, southwestern PA, jobs were few and far between.
Yes, they were.
So I had to really understand the lay of the land and will my way into a white collar job as an undegreed person, taking minimal pay just to have that opportunity. But I'm wired a certain way. You know, I was blessed with that. I mean, that not everybody's wired like me, thank goodness.
Well, back then, the city of Pittsburgh in western Pennsylvania had its own epidemic, you know, with the collapse of the steel industry.
No question.
And I think we as a city and as a whole, a community, did a great job in rebounding.
I would agree. Going
into technology, going into obviously healthcare, going into, you know, using our roots with higher education. You know, University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon, Duquesne, all played a big role.
I think the universities are what pulled. I believe this. The universities in town, the strength of them is what pulled Pittsburgh out.
Yes.
Of that, our own recession. They used to romanticize about college juries, Renaissance, and all this stuff. Nice guy, but I think it really was the education strength in this town which helped flourish the rest of the industry, because these companies would come and set up regional or headquarters here because they could pull from the education. I started my career at a company called National Draeger here, but the big move for me was going to this new thing called RPS, which was the infancy of FedEx Ground.
Really?
And that's where, and they came to Pittsburgh. They were owned by Roadway Services in Ohio, but they wanted to start RPS and headquartered in Pittsburgh because of the educational base. It just made sense. But that was new technology, scanning packages with barcodes. That was a new thing, right? The point was, it was the educational base, I believe, that would brought Pittsburgh back.
More recently, a lot of the robotics tech stuff has been kind of based here as a result of that as well.
It's nuts. It's huge here.
Yeah, but again, for those students that have generalized degrees with really no specific interest, I don't ever devalue those degrees or devalue the idea of accomplishing those degrees, because even if it's not, you know, earmarking them for a certain thing, they'll figure it out.
Sure.
It's just giving them the confidence, and it's also giving them the education, but also I think giving them that ticket to have a leg up maybe in the interview process. And
Right.
You can't devalue that today.
For sure.
And I think that's what I think is a lot of society's pushing back on. Well, it's not worth the money. Well, I mean, it's really interesting how we are quick to determine what's important to other people. Like you make a blanket statement, well, college degree's not worth the money anymore. Well, what about all those students that have goals and dreams and ideas of what they want to do in life? How can you devalue their life plan by you telling them it's not worth it? We do that in society all the time.
I mean, there's some occupations that, I mean, it has to go through a college degree. I used to teach a bunch of pharmacy students at Duquesne, just with a different course, but you know, that's one of those things. We talk with the students sometimes in class about, you know, college education. Is it this idea of you're building up your human capital, you're learning a bunch of stuff, or is it just like a piece of paper that acts as a signal? And, you know, we pros and cons of both and look at the data and all that. But when I would teach the pharmacy students, you know, that human capital thing is not a real hard sell for them. Like, are you learning something in college that's helping you become a better pharmacist? I sure hope you are. You know, like, I really hope you are at the end of the day. So, you know, different occupations, you know,
Absolutely.
Different thing. I mean, I say to my students too, and it's honest, you know, I wouldn't, if I could do what I'm doing right now, that's what I want to do. Mm-hmm. If I could do it without getting a PhD, I would not have got a PhD. It's a lot of work. It took a long time.
It is. Yeah.
You know?
Right.
But that's what was needed. And so that's, you know, I generally try to say, you know, graduate school is for getting you to where you want to go in life. You know, I try as best I can. There's this feeling. So if you look over the generations, right, like everyone went to high school, and then a lot of times, you know, think back years, right, people out of high school go get jobs, and, you know, college was a minority choice for a lot of people. Now most people go to college, and where I think it's kind of gotten to, and I've experienced this a lot with students, is the next kind of just assumed thing is grad school. It's like, well, you go to college and then you just go to grad school, and so why do you do that? Well, that's kind of just what people do. And the most popular one of just go to grad school is law school. And I try and dissuade kids as much as possible from just going to law school, because that just seems to be the thing to do. But there's students that I want to be a lawyer and I want to be a judge, or I want to, good, you need to go to law school to do that. So go to law school.
Yeah. And that level, those levels of accomplishment and requirements, whether they're personal or whether they're career-wise, that's you're going to find out in the marketplace anyways as you work for a corporation. Let's say you find your first job and you really love it, and I could see myself staying here for a while.
Right.
Well, there's going to be levels of requirement that you're going to need to fulfill to get to next levels within the organization. That's no different than the skill set you learned in your more formidable educational years. Same thing.
Right. Well, you have to be credentialed what you do. You have to have licenses to practice certain fields. And a lot of times,
thank goodness,
I know, but a lot of times it's having that bachelor's degree, you know, that you have to be, you have to have that degree to get a position. You see how many job openings are on Indeed, or you find on LinkedIn, or if you still read the newspaper, you know, the one ads.
They still have those.
I guess, yeah. But, you know, when you look at what the requirements are, it's going to be a bachelor's degree a lot of the times.
And is it, okay, and yes, that's interesting. So that's not always, it's often in there. Mm-hmm. Even if the job is more of a general sales nature or not a specialized technical requirement. But again, it comes back to that level of accomplishment. That employer is saying, I need someone on the bare bones can follow through and finish a task. If it proves nothing else, it proves that, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's the signaling value of a diploma. Is it, you know, it signals that you were able to accomplish that.
That's exactly it. Now, with the students I work with, you know, if there's a position open to work as a chemist, you know, at a plant, whether if it's Neville Island or if it's, you know, somewhere down the Ohio River, you have to know analytical chemistry. You have to know polymers. You have to know physical chemistry. You have to know inorganic chemistry. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to work in a lab setting with other people who have the same knowledge base.
Right.
You know, that's why it's important to have a college degree. and it's based on, of course, the field that you're going into.
Which invalidates this whole generalized argument that it's not worth it. I just shake my head because you hear it more and more, and you're hearing it now more in the pandemic because everybody's just
you could conjure a college situation where it wouldn't be worth it for someone.
I mean, sure.
That's what the painting with the broad stroke is kind of what gets me with that, because you could, again, like we did earlier, you can conjure a situation where it works for everyone that would be silly, and conjure a situation where it works for no one, which would be equally silly.
Yeah.
But there's also the trades. We need people in the trades.
Sure.
We need, contractors. We need construction workers. We need people who specialize as electricians, as plumbers. We need,
but higher. I don't ever view higher education as a knock against the trade. I don't know why they're always pitted against each other.
I don't know why either.
But it should be they should work in harmony in a full society. That's just.
And there are some colleges that offer construction management as a major too. So
Oh yeah, I mean, project management is a huge part. I don't even know what a project manager actually does. That term is floated around so much. Is that the head guy just putting all the pieces together?
Term,
but
Gary.
but project managers can be found in every corporation. And
you can call me a project manager based on what my boss, who's the dean of our science school,
decides what the project
is. I'm suddenly a project manager, right?
I don't know. I laugh at the argument that higher education is not worth it anymore. I mean, I hear it so often. Maybe I'm running around the wrong circles. I don't know, but
it's really even hard to. I don't even really know what that means at the end of the day. If we really say isn't worth it, how? Different people get different things. It might be worth it for one person. It might not be worth it for someone else.
But it's again the audacity that we have in society, which is more reflective of society today. This web society, social media society, where we're making judgments of what's right and wrong, or good or bad for other people. We don't have that right, even for our own children. We don't have the right, I don't believe, to determine their future. Or to dictate their future. And I think that not giving people the opportunity to create their own future is a travesty.
Well said.
I agree.
I don't know. That's just me. Well, we're going to take a break here in a second because I've got a old man bladder. We're going to come back and talk a little baseball.
Baseball. I love it.
All right.
That.
Okay, we're out of the gate. Why are you so diabolically opposed to the DH?
Because it sucks.
Oh, no way. Why?
Strategy. Have you heard what the Atlantic League is doing this year?
No.
I knew you'd ask about this, so actually I was reading a little bit about this. They're doing this thing called the double hook DH.
The what?
Double hook DH.
What's
this?
double
I think I could buy
hook
into. Okay,
DH?
so you've got your starting pitcher. So you start the game, you got your starting pitcher, and you have a DH. Okay? DH stays in the game as long as your starting pitcher stays in the game. Once the starting pitcher's gone, DH is gone, and now you're reverting to like normal National League adult baseball.
So your relief pitcher's got to know how to hit.
Right, or you revert to the pinch hitters, double switch kind of stuff after that. So it's interesting because it's going to be the incentives for leaving your starting pitcher in. Now you have a batter that's longer.
Because then you get a decent reliever, and you might want to pull. You don't want to pull him.
Right, if it's a close game, do you want to leave your starter in a little bit longer so your DH gets another go at it? I'm curious to see how it all shakes out. I don't think it's necessarily going to push one way or the other. I initially, when I read that, going back and forth with friends of mine, I thought it would increase the variance of scores in games. I'm not sure I believe that anymore. So I think it'll be like if we have a cluster of games here, I think you're going to see the low scoring ones be more low scoring and the high scoring ones be more high scoring.
Really?
I'm not sure I believe that anymore, though. That was my initial sense.
It sounds logical, but if you have a starting pitcher's now out of the game, you lose your DH,
right?
And say you're stuck with a relief pitcher that has to go to bat, who is not on the field enough to begin with and doesn't see any live pitching.
Because they never bat.
No, they don't. But like you said, you have a pinch hitter. It doesn't. To me, the variance won't be there like in the latter part of the game. In the later innings, You
totally threw me for a loop on the relievers not batting. I was at PNC Park years ago and played one of those in between inning games and won and got to have a bat signed by anyone.
Huh.
And we were up there. We were having a few drinks and we were up there having a good time. and they just gave you a sheet and you had to fill out a number 1 and a number 2.
Okay.
And we were going back and forth like, who should it be? And Alex Presley was the hot rookie at the time. Like, I don't know, I like Alex Presley. That's good. He's an outfielder. McCutcheon was like popular too. And I go, no. I'm like, we should pick some reliever that's like never batted before and like have him sign. Like, I think it was Evan Meek.
Oh my goodness.
Meek, all-star, by the way. And so I think we put down Evan Meek, and then second I put McCutcheon. They just sent me McCutcheon back because I guess they
get
weren't
the better end of the deal there
I'm like,
anyways, in
it's
hindsight.
it's a supply thing. It'd be like the only bat in the world signed by Evan Meek. That'd be fantastic.
That would
I
be
know.
true and utterly worthless.
But asking about the DH it just tells me that they're messing too much with the game of baseball right now. Too much experimentation, too many variances in the game now that I just do not like. I'm that old school baseball fan.
So you don't like a DH?
I'm indifferent.
How can you be indifferent? That's a title change. I think,
know
right?
it is.
That's like being indifferent about socialism.
No,
I mean, let's be clear. The DH sucks. Let's be very clear about
The
it.
DH is absolutely necessary.
You love having the DH rule.
Absolutely, 100%.
I'm used to the DH in the American League. I'm used to pitchers batting in the National League. It's what I grew up with.
Me too.
And-
but interleague
and-
play squashed all that for me. It doesn't matter anymore.
And that's a very good point. Now, as far as if you force me to make the decision, and let's just say I'm a commissioner for the hour, and I would have to say we got to go DH.
No way.
We have to go DH.
Why just one DH then? Why not have 9 separate hitters and 9 separate fielders? Why just one?
Like in football,
what do you mean?
like
No,
you
like-
have people play offense. You have people
You have
play
a designated
defense.
hitter for the pitcher. So generally it's the pitcher, right? You have a designated hitter for the pitcher.
Right.
Unless it's like Ohtani out for the Angels, right?
Right.
Well, why not just have a separate lineup that bats and then a separate lineup that fields? Why just have one?
Because that wouldn't
Because it'd be ridiculous,
That wouldn't
that's
be
why.
good for the
Right, it
game
would be
because that
ridiculous.
would not give the youth the ability to fall in love with the player, which is part of the romance of baseball and keep
Willie
the youth interested.
Stargell.
I love you, Eric.
Stargell.
That's an absolutely ridiculous explanation. The reason
Willie-
is if you're going to do one, there's no reason why you couldn't do 9.
or Dave Parker.
You could do that.
Of
Yeah,
course you
could do that.
It would be silly, and that's why DHs are
It
silly.
would actually be interesting.
But we grew up.
It would be silly. It would be absolutely ridiculous.
It wouldn't be
and that's
baseball.
why.
It'd be something else.
Just like the DH isn't baseball.
Oh, that's
But being
baseball.
that kid that admires these
Absolutely
baseball players, when we were little, we all fought to have number 8. Everybody wanted to have number 8 for Willie Stargell.
Right.
The numbers didn't go that high up enough to get 39 for Dave Parker, but
He was the man.
oh my gosh. I mean, and talk about a baseball player who you wanted to admire in the outfield and have a cannon for an arm like his, and for him to be so clutch. You know he's going to get you that double. He's going to get you that home run. He's going to, he was just such a great baseball player. He was so much fun to watch.
Yeah,
Ricky Henderson,
The
for
greatest.
Oakland. Yeah.
Ricky's the best.
Yeah.
Should we have DH equivalents in other sports, by the way?
Okay.
Like in I don't follow basketball too much, but like in the NBA, like 5 players that
For
always play
foul
office.
shooting, for foul shots.
Sure, add that
for
too.
foul shooting.
5
I'd be
players.
okay. Well, I don't care
Yeah.
about basketball, so they can do anything they want.
So 5 players that always play offense. So like we have 2 sets of 5, right? So we've got 2 teams. We've got the Lakers and the Bulls, whatever. So we've got the Lakers and the Bulls on the left end of the court. We've got the 5 Lakers that play offense for them and the 5 that play defense for the Lakers.
Oh,
the
that's
Bulls,
too
whatever.
cumbersome.
Well,
It's
how about-
DH. Once you're down the DH path, then you can't reject this as being any different than just having
no,
one DH.
no, it's logistically too cumbersome to
of
have
course.
them jump
I
running back.
understand.
Like hockey does shifts and lines, and that's even sometimes cumbersome to watch them.
Okay, then let's say no one can cross the middle. You have to pass the ball to your other team, your other 5. That's what the DH is. At its root, that's what the
It's
DH
one
is.
player who never gets a chance to bat because they don't practice that. It's almost usually an automatic.
You're
out.
starting pitcher. You're
Look at
pitching
Ohtani.
every
Look
other
how
5
valuable
days.
Ohtani is now.
That's one example.
And we haven't even gotten into
That's
the
a-
complete,
that's the
full,
black
and
swan.
utter lack of strategy in the American League. We haven't even gotten into that.
When you say strategy, so you have to juggle and you have to juggle an automatic out for most intents purposes. It's anticlimactic. It defeats. It takes the sting out of innings early in the game.
Yeah.
You got 2 outs and guy on second, and the pitcher's coming up on the 3rd inning. You're not going to pull the pitcher.
Cahill's bunt hit yesterday. Beautiful play. Wouldn't have had
But
that in the
it's
American
so
League.
rare, though. Would you
Managers
not?
actually have to manage in the National
Oh, that's
League.
true.
It's not a
I get
coincidence.
it.
I get
It's
that.
not a
Definitely
coincidence
have
that LaRussa's in the American League.
Yeah.
Right?
Good point. I'll give you that. On that particular instance, I'll give you that. I just think that runs, and I don't want juiced balls in games 12.
But changes
to
come into
10.
baseball. Like, I mean, all these minor league, different rules that they're trying out in all these different leagues. I mean, change is coming. That's what they hired Theo Epstein for, is to kind of gauge these things and see what might stick.
They're moving the mound back by a foot.
In the Atlantic League, I believe they're doing that as well.
What? I didn't hear that one.
That's the Atlantic League, so that's independent technically. It's not like affiliated with any major league teams. They're moving let's see if we can remember all these. Moving the mound back a foot, which I think is going to have an unintended consequence. So they want more time to hit a fastball, right? That's why they're moving the mound back a foot, but it's going to make breaking pitches a little nastier on the
think so.
flip
I think
side.
it'll be harder to throw,
I'm
too,
not sure
accurately.
Yes, though their rebuttal to that, and I find this hard to believe, but that's what they say, and I don't know for a fact otherwise, is catchers can vary by as much as like 3 feet themselves where they set up backwards and forwards, which seems like a lot to me.
That sounds
way too much.
Nevertheless, catchers
Because
do.
isn't the responsibility of the ump is to push the catcher forward? That's
I
why
always
that
thought
line.
so.
I know they will put a hand on the back of the catcher so the catcher knows where they are. The catcher knows where the umpire is behind
Yeah,
them.
but I thought part of that umpiring thing was to not let them create that advantage. They're supposed to gauge from the tip of the plate back. The catcher's not supposed to be given
Well, they have
carte blanche to the space there.
They don't chalk it out, but there is a catcher's box that has to stay if you extend the foul. I mean,
It's a little broad.
but that does give some variation in terms of that. So my initial response in hearing that too was, wow, you've got all these pitchers that have spent their, the last 10 plus years throwing at 60 feet 6 inches, and you're just so wired into that. Adding a foot might really, like, that is enough to. It's hard enough to throw a baseball like that.
Oh well, they got to adapt. I mean, like, you don't think the NBA should raise that to, was it 10 feet now? It should be 11 feet. I mean,
I'd hate that. That would be awful.
Why?
The only thing would be, what would shooting look like the next year if they did that? Even if it was 6 inches, like, what would shooting look like? I think it would plummet.
In a couple of years, and then it would change.
Yes,
I mean,
understood.
they'd adapt.
Understood.
I don't like all these rules
change
changes.
is coming. What else are they doing? There's a one of the minor leagues has a rule now where per batter, and per batter, like, the pitcher is only allowed to throw over to a base like twice or step off twice, something like that. Which creates some interesting game theory kind of stuff going on there.
Well, and MLB tried putting timers. I mean, they're supposed. I mean, they say it's still there, but it's not displayed.
No one pays attention to it.
Epstein's been pretty clear. It looks, they want more balls in play. They want more players doing athletic things. They don't like the 3 outcomes. So whatever they could find that might seem to work to get them down that path is probably what's coming down the
And that's
pipeline.
just to get more fans in the seats.
Of
So
course.
that's a theory. That's a theory.
But the thing
right?
is,
It's a theory.
I don't think they need to mess with the game at all. I just happen to like the game the way it is. I've always been a traditionalist when it comes to baseball. I don't like the idea of moving the mound back 1 foot. I don't like the idea of having, if there happens to be a doubleheader, which is rare anymore when there are doubleheaders, but now you're going to make that a 7-inning game.
Yeah, I hate that.
That is awful.
All you're doing is you're ripping off the fans. What you're doing.
Yes, you are.
You are in
opinion.
you are in the narrowest sliver of the Venn diagram of being a traditionalist that likes the DH.
I'm weird. there's no other way around it.
I think I like.
I'm
'cause
weird in the way I think.
I think I like it because it's kind of what I grew up with, and it was that difference between watching the Pirates and watching Oakland. And I grew up with that, and it was just extra. There was always the ability of home runs. There was just more offense, and I used to, as a kid, hate to watch the pitcher bat because when you're very young, I didn't understand the actual strategy behind most of that stuff. It wasn't. I mean, it was like this.
It was a waste of the bat.
Here comes
9
Bruce.
times out of 10.
Here comes Bruce Keeson. Here comes John Candelaria. Here comes John Candelaria.
Yeah,
Guaranteed
1,
out.
2,
John
3,
Candelaria. Rick
Bruce
Rhoden.
Keeson.
Rick Rhoden could hit once in a while, but
Yes,
I mean,
he could.
But the point
Actually,
was,
he was a very
Dave
good hitting
Justy. I mean, like there was no. Those guys
You can
weren't
make
getting
me
on
laugh
base. They're
all
not
day
getting.
long.
They're not getting
I
on
love this.
base. They're just not getting on base.
But like you said,
know,
in the
it's
late
like-
70s, we suddenly had
Jim
WUAB out of Cleveland, Lorain, Ohio. We got to watch the Indians. And then
Yes.
here comes the DH. Oh my
It
gosh.
was so cool.
Yeah, it was
It wa-
awesome.
it
There's no
was-
pitcher going to bat.
it
And I'm like,
was so- it
okay,
was so
it just
cool.
made baseball better to watch, having that DH as a little kid.
Well, you just felt like there was a chance. You had more of a chance of, if you just had a. I don't know. They could. I
had
can't
more runners
explain
on
it, man.
base.
It just,
You had more
I
runs
want to
being
see
scored.
people hit.
Me too.
And when you see a pitcher up there, like, I mean, some of those pitchers are. Listen, Matt. Some of those pitchers are absolutely pathetic, and I think today, especially because they protect them in training, they never let them swing. Sonny Gray was scary watching up there because you could tell they wouldn't let him go anywhere near batter's box as a hitter ever.
No.
I don't know
tell
what he's
me-
doing in St. Louis now, but I'm saying
How big of a smile was there on your face when Bartolo Colon hit a home run?
Oh my God.
Greatest moment in sports history.
You're right. So you have those moments, but I will forego those moments to have more offense on a regular basis and give these teams a chance to actually score runs.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know.
I like the strategy aspect of it. I like that managers have to think it through and try
And
and figure
I
out.
agree with that.
I like
I
that.
do think that's important in baseball. You know,
But
the
teams are
strategy,
structured
but
differently because of that.
Oh, for
Like,
sure they are.
Of course.
And, like, that's why it was such a. It was I don't know the right word to use, but in the off season, baseball really dragged its feet on whether they were going to do the universal DH again.
Right.
And that really messed up the free agent market for a couple of guys because you're effectively
No doubt.
you could be doubling the number of teams that are willing to sign them. Like
Right.
the Nelson Cruzes of the world or something like that.
right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, I like the tradition. I like to keep the game the way it is, and let's just keep at it, keep playing, keep
Nothing
playing.
like,
so you
nothing
don't want-
like back in the day when
you don't
Babe
want-
Ruth used to stroll up as a DH, right? Nothing like that back in the day.
You don't like the interleague play then?
I got used to it. It took me some time. I still miss the days of National League playing only each other in those teams. I like the division rivalries we had back then, where there weren't as many teams in Major League Baseball. Expansion kind of messed that up as well. But I mean, it was exciting when the Phillies came to town in the late '70s because that was their main rivalry, the Pirates and the Phillies.
I would
know?
love to see baseball go back to no interleague play or create more specialized times those teams met.
The World Series was something without interleague play.
That's
The
even
World
the
Series
old-
was
the
something.
All-Star game was
The All-Star
too.
game
it meant
was-
something.
That's
Yes,
true.
it did.
It meant something really spectacular. Like, wow! I mean,
Those are guys that wouldn't get to play each other, right? No,
yeah. I mean, and that's
and it
what,
was neat to watch, one or two or maybe three back in the day, Pirates that made the All-Star team, and they're playing against, Willie Randolph for the Yankees. They're playing against George Brett from the Royals. And we're going old school, late 70s, early 80s
but
here.
just going to
And it was
Cleveland to see those players live for a
Yes.
National League fan was just like, oh my God, there's Dave Winfield. Like,
my first American
Don
League,
Mattingly.
Sure.
that's who I saw in 1986. My first ever game outside of Pittsburgh was at Yankee Stadium in July of '86. It was the Mariners versus the Yankees, and I got to see Dave Winfield play right field in that short porch. I think it was 318 down the line at Yankee Stadium. The first base line, right field. And he had a heck of an arm.
Dude, he was-
Could he throw? And the
Was that the
Yankees
day
were-
he threw the ball and killed the bird?
that was earlier in that decade. I think
Okay.
that was like in. Can't remember when that was.
They arrested him for that, actually.
that was
I
in
don't-
Toronto.
Don't think they charged him.
It was a
They arrested
seagull.
him for it.
It was a seagull in Toronto, is what it was.
I don't mind
So,
interleague play too much. It doesn't seem
I've
to.
gotten, like I said, I've gotten used to it, but there was a thrill to see the New York Yankees play the Seattle Mariners, two teams I've never seen before.
Oh, absolutely.
And by the time 1986 rolled around, I've seen probably every team in the National League over and over and over
Right.
again.
Right.
I love obscure minutia, and so I think what I liked when interleague play rolled around would be things like, this is the first time, that's a bad example. First time this team has played here since the 1922 World Series. Things like that.
Oh yeah,
I kind of
get-
like that.
I like that too. I
get
like
a
that
kick out
too.
of that. Or whenever I remember they brought the Yankees at some point, obviously, over to play the Pirates, but it took a while for that to happen because
Right.
I was around this area. I think what happened, it was like the first time the Yankees had played in Pittsburgh since the
You were
1960
probably in
World
grad
Series.
school at WVU at the time.
And they marched out
Yeah.
Mazeroski for the first pitch. I love stuff like that. I just love that. I think
get
that's
it.
great.
No, I get it. And it's so baseball's so beautiful in that a part of me loved that separation because it created those special moments. But then there's a part of me that says, man, if I do that, I'll never see Oakland. And I saw Oakland play the Pirates in 2012. That to me was just like the most mind-numbingly awesome thing imaginable. For me personally, it was
See,
just
I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, so I had access to National and American League very, very easy. So
Yeah.
I don't
Right, you
think I
had
had the
both.
same experience you guys
You had
did
both.
growing up with only like it's an effort to go see one of the leagues. If you live in Pittsburgh, you
yeah,
gotta
we
go drive to
were young,
Cleveland.
so we it wasn't like you and I were going to hop in a car and go to Cleveland. We were little. We had to
Right.
get there. It was
Right.
reachable, but it wasn't like an afternoon. We were
Right.
going to go
Right.
do that. And the Indians sucked so bad for so long.
Oh, they did.
No one wanted to. I never wanted to root for the Indians. It was like we knew they were out there playing in Municipal Stadium. The Mistake by the Lake. It was.
And I actually did see a game there.
Let's not
I
forget.
saw a couple of them too there.
In
Julio
93.
Franco, early mid '80s. I saw, or late '80s. I saw Julio Franco and Craig
wow.
Swindell.
Let's not
and-
forget
Okay.
a blockbuster movie was made about the Indians being really bad. Like, let's not forget about that. They've been very good
and
since.
very
It's on all the
accurate,
time.
and
It's
very
always on.
accurate,
That
and very
movie.
accurate.
Very, very, yeah. Anyway, but in '93 we saw, I can't remember who the Indians played that year. It may have been the Detroit Tigers or something like that. And that's when the Indians were starting to get good. Carlos Baerga, Omar Vizquel. They had Jim Thome,
Manny Ramirez.
Manny Ramirez,
That's right. Man.
Yeah, he was on that team.
Kenny
That team was
Lofton.
stacked.
That
Yeah.
team
Big
was
Kenny Lofton fan.
really,
Big
really,
Kenny Lofton
really
fan.
good.
Yep.
Very good.
The Indians.
What about limits on shifting?
I hate the shift. Oh, I had to jump in and say that.
Oh,
I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
I don't
hate
like it, but I don't see a way to administer an accurate limit on it, because
don't
what do
know
you
if
do?
they're-
The invisible lines that
yeah.
you can't,
They say no more than two infielders on one side of, or you need two infielders
But
on
what
each side of
qualifies the invisible line? Like
second base.
Yeah.
Is what they say. That's what they've done in practice. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm against it.
Well, when you go
I love it.
behind there,
I don't
I
mind
mean-
shifting. Play players wherever you want. I have no problem with that.
yeah, I think you can't limit where they play. You can't.
Can't or shouldn't. they certainly can, but I'm not a fan
I
of
don't
that.
think they should.
Can you
Yeah, they
imagine
should.
Tony
I don't
Gwynn
like it. I
up
don't-
against a shift? He can spray the ball anywhere he wanted. So the shift
Well,
would be nothing.
but the shift's been going on forever. People, Pirate fans, that there was Stargell was shifted like.
Ted Williams was shifted.
Yeah, I mean, like it's been going on forever.
I think
it's
that
just
might have
but not to the
that might
level
have
of
been
the
the first
shifting
one was Ted
today.
Williams.
really.
There's like really. I went to Cooperstown like a week or not a week, like a month or two ago, and there's like really famous picture of like this is the shift against Ted Williams, and it was
Yeah.
like it's a very well known
See,
photograph.
Phil, here's
Wow.
why I think it's okay. Is because what that shift does is exposes that the player that everybody assumes is so great really isn't that great. If you can't hit the ball, are you more valuable as a hitter if you can hit the ball at will in various parts of the ballpark?
Right.
Or is your value limited to power numbers generally and in one half of the park?
Well, the way statistics are today, they know every tendency of every
I
player.
think that's great.
And I do like that too. I'm not saying I don't like that part of it.
And it's been going on for a long time.
really
Players have
has
had notes
been.
in their
I know.
back
I
part,
just-
and especially your outfielders. They have notes.
Well, yeah, in the outfield you can cheat, based on who's at bat, and that player's tendency of where in the outfield the ball is going to be hit. In the infield, I don't care for it. I just don't like it. But that's me. Again, I'm weird.
Well,
so-
I don't like it when I'm batting. When my team's in the field, I don't give a shit what they do. They got to stop the ball.
Right.
But I mean,
But-
I understand. But I don't really know when you say right or left side of the base. I mean, there's an imaginary line behind the base that goes straight to center field, and then how do you? What if they want to play
I can't
over
remember.
there?
I just feel like there was a league. I don't think it's happening in the. Don't
I
quote
can't
me on
see
that.
how they can do it.
I don't think
without
it's happening
putting
in the
a
minors
line
this
on
year,
the
though it
field.
might be. There's some league that had imposed as a experiment restrictions on shifting, and that's how they imposed it. I think it was just the infielders, and you had
Is
to
it
have
just
two
a
on
couple
each
So
side
times
of
is
the
a
it
game
game.
they can
visual?
shift?
Like the umpire has to look straight down from the
Yeah,
plate
and
to
another
determine.
thing. Yeah, this gets me to. I talk about this with my uncle all the time. They always talk about the rule, and that's the rule. Let's say that's the rules. You got to have two on each side of second base. Let's say you don't. Like, what's the punishment? You lose a strike? Do you lose an out? They get thrown out of the
What
game?
is
like
the punishment?
It's like the visits
Penalty.
like the visits to the mound. There are limits on visits to the mound now, right? Like
There always should have been, but
fine.
now they're timed.
But
right?
there's I think it's 5 or 6. Okay,
Are they still timed?
Well, what if you go out there and you?
It
break
seems
the
like they
rule?
are.
What's
The umpire always seems to be intervening.
Yeah, what's
first
the
5
penalty?
seconds.
Yeah, what's the
in,
I'm just
penalty?
curious what the
What's the penalty?
I mean, there has to be some, right?
I don't think there is a penalty. You'd be fined, maybe. but they don't take an out away.
My
They
owner will
don't
pay a fine so I can get a
reject out of the
competitive
game.
advantage.
Yeah,
My
right.
owner would be glad to pay a fine so I can get a
Right.
competitive advantage.
Right.
Done. Great.
Right.
At least
Right.
there's a paper in economics.
An out?
About,
Can they assess an out?
Right. That's just what I want to know. But
Right.
in terms of the fine, this makes me think of this great paper in economics where there was a daycare, I think it was in Israel, and they were having problems with parents showing up late to pick up their kids. And so they had these economists come in, and I didn't bring them in. It's not that big of a problem. But the economists saw this and they said, here's what you should do. You should impose a fine on the parents if they're late. Doesn't, $20, whatever it is. Maybe get one free one and it's like $20 or 15 minutes. It's $20, whatever it is. Impose a fine because now we've, people don't want to pay that and it's going to dissuade them from being late. So they impose this policy, and the parents, the rate of how often they were late doubled. And they're like, what? And basically they came to the conclusion of well, when you didn't have any fine, we didn't really know what the cost was at the end of the day. It's kind of burdensome to the people there. We didn't want to burden them, all of that. They said, once you set the price, we knew exactly what it was. We were more than happy to pay that price. So it's if you have you set what the penalty is for going to the mountain too many times, maybe you start seeing people doing it a lot more, being like, oh, we're very willing to pay that. We're glad to break that rule.
until it's $10,000, $25,000.
They paid then probably.
Sure, for a win to get you to the playoffs. So
Situational, absolutely right.
Yeah.
So you got to make
So
it.
it's like establishing a price. And once they established a price, there was no confusion. There was no uncertainty. They were very willing to pay that.
There has to be a penalty within the score of the game somehow, or the way the game's played.
Something.
Yeah, I
always wondered about that too.
I think it should just be an out.
That's a pretty hefty fine.
It is.
That's a hefty fine.
But
So you have a pitching coach that's the Oakland had a pitching coach a couple years ago. It was a little on the portly side, and he wasn't jogging out there. And my point was they were timing him. This is the year they had the timer. That's gone now,
And that's
right?
a long walk from the Oakland dugout too.
That's
Oh my gosh,
That's
it seems like it's a mile long.
Well, there's an example. There's no uniformity there from stadium to stadium.
No,
there isn't.
No.
So, so if they're late, there's the cursory walk that the home plate umpire makes when there's a conference at the mound, and he'll walk around the catcher and then he'll start the gun. By the time he gets there, they break up.
yeah,
Usually by the time he gets to the edge of the mound, they'll break up, and he's pissed off and walk all the way back now. But it's cursory.
yeah.
That's part of the tradition of the game, right?
To me, that's show
it's
as well.
typically
That's-
the job of the umpire to keep the pace of the game going. So
Right.
that's why they have to walk out there and do that.
Huh, I never
But to me, it's also kind of like part of the show. It's like, all right, okay, I'm
Which
always
is
looking for the
beauty
entertainment.
of the game, man. That's
aspect of the game,
beauty
too.
of the game.
I miss the days of now because you have replay. You don't have as many banners being thrown out of baseball games as you used to have, and I miss that. I have to say, I loved it when Earl Weaver and Lou Piniella, Sparky Anderson would get so animated.
Was it McClendon that stole the bag?
Yes,
Yeah.
Lloyd McClendon stole the bag, which was the best thing I think I've ever seen
Best
in baseball.
highlight the Pirates ever had in 20 years. Of that stadium.
Exactly. And I think that was in 2001, actually, the first year at the ballpark.
Was it really?
I think so. Billy Martin was another one.
Billy Martin.
You throw the hat down, and then you're kicking dirt on home plate. And I
Speaking of
love
replay,
that.
I think teams should be able to bet. We talked about this before. I think teams should be able to bet on replay stuff because now it's just one-sided, right? Only one side can institute or request a replay.
I think so.
But what if the other team says, well, I'm willing to give you 2 strikes if we don't have a replay? Ooh. And then they come back and say, I'll be willing to give you 2 balls or, whatever. Just and let them wager and let them price each other to the point where finally we're going to have a replay or they're going to pay to prevent a replay. Why not have that? That'd be fantastic.
That's
I would love
pretty
to see
deep.
that.
That's pretty
That'd be
deep.
awesome.
But yeah, it'd be interesting.
Anytime you could add economics and markets to anything,
Then we're
things
talking.
get better.
Then we're talking.
I see what you're saying.
Be fantastic because it's one-sided right now. Because I can't. If I'm safe, only you can challenge to say no. We got you out. Well, what if I don't? No, I kind of like that he's safe, and I think the replay is going to go against me. So I'll trade you
I see what
2
you're
strikes
saying.
on the next batter to say no.
Has replay been effective in baseball?
Like, what do we mean by effective? Like overall, is it a good thing?
No, has it added to the experience for the fan?
Not at the when you're at the stadium. It's kind of I don't like the downtime of it, to be honest.
Right.
My issue is I don't like how we have a play, and then the manager like sits at the top and is talking to his guy in the back. Excuse me, he's talking to his guy in the back, and kind of, oh, hold on, we're going to see if we want to review it. I think it's got to be like
Bob Melvin.
It's got to
exactly
be
what he looks like.
It's got to be like challenge. Give it a moment, a couple seconds, whatever it is, but it's got to be like the play was called, and I need to
there's
tell
got
you
to be
quickly.
an element of risk there for the manager.
Well, what about the
It's
player
meant to
though?
get the obvious calls that were wrong corrected, and I don't think anyone's really against that. The problem is now, at second base, right? I think there was a review yesterday in the Pirates game about this. You always had the neighborhood play, and both teams were fine with the neighborhood play, by the way. Everyone was fine with the neighborhood play, but now you nitpick it to you were off when both sides would be happy to be granted the ability to have the neighborhood play.
Well, they're doing it to keep the collisions down, right? That was initially
That
there?
might be part of it, I think. But what about you're a base runner at first, and you're stealing second, and you're called out, but right away you're safe, and that player is signaling to the manager, replay it. So and they get animated when they do it too.
Do you think?
Oh my gosh, yeah, big time. So
A lot of those plays, like teams, wherever the umpire calls out or safe at second base, I feel like in the past you were granted a little bit of leeway of even for a moment coming off the bag as you're coming to stop. If you flagrantly come off the bag, obviously you're going to be out. But that was granted, and no one had a problem with that. So that's just the way the game had come. But now it's it's every minute, and I just don't like the nitpicking.
And
I don't like.
I was having a conversation with a good friend about human error as an umpire or as a referee. That's always been part of the game, no matter what sport it is.
But we're more forgiving with baseball umpires than we are with NFL referees.
Oh, no doubt about
Would
that.
you not agree?
No doubt
I
about
think the
that.
baseball umpires at least the home plate umpires making way more decisions. That might be a function of it. They're making hundreds of decisions a game, whereas in the NFL,
Let's talk about umpires for a second.
Oh,
Home
right.
plate umpires.
Yes.
Okay. My observation going back, let's just go back 2010. My observation has been and maybe because I'm paying attention more critically, but the amount of really shitty calls, balls and strikes is even games that Angel Hernandez is not the umpire. Take him out of the equation. It still is not good. And it's like it's fallen off a cliff. I don't get it. Or was I not looking at it correctly in the 2000s?
That's another one of those minor league changes. Is they're going to electronic,
computerized.
robotic.
That's where I'm headed with the
zone.
conversation. Why would that be a bad thing? If we could do it scientifically.
My largest argument against that is I think proponents for robotic umpiring believe there is some objective ideal in umpiring that can be achieved, and I just don't think that can ever be the case. Because even with the way the rule book reads, it's like the bottom of the knee to the armpit, whatever the rule book reads for what the height of the strike zone should be, you still need to have someone sitting there calibrating it to each batter. Well, that's not objective anymore. You've got someone sitting there doing that. So that's my
Altuve.
Versus Aaron Judge. All right, we got different strike zones.
You think?
And if people would come back and say, okay, we could just write some sort of algorithm that looks at your body and all that, and then I'm going to do what the Asian kids do in the Little League World Series and just squat in the box. Well, now you can never throw them in the
The thing is, that should be the challenge. That should be the challenge for the pitcher to know what the umpire's strike zone is. And like you said, a Jose Altuve versus an Aaron Judge. You're talking how many, almost a foot in difference between the two players.
Yeah.
That should be part of the challenge for a pitcher. That should be part of the challenge for the catcher and for the umpire, actually.
So that's a good argument to have a human there as an umpire.
That's why I'd rather see the human element still in charge of the game.
They're just not good. I'm sorry.
I know they're not.
I'm sorry.
I think they do pretty
consistent.
well.
Consistent.
I think they do okay.
There's a major lack of lack of consistency with strike zones.
Some of them.
But again, that's part of the game.
Yeah, and the pitchers should adapt knowing who the ump's
Yes,
going to be
they
this
should.
day.
They're being paid millions and
First
millions and
couple
millions of
innings, they
dollars.
kind of find out
They
where
should know.
he's calling low and away today. They know that. If it's consistent,
it would do interesting things for the labor market in baseball, because a big thing now is pitch framing for catchers, and if you go a robot, that's gone. So
Yeah.
you'd have It would be interesting. I don't tend to get too worked up over umpires too much.
Doing
I don't
that
know.
as a kid.
At the pitch framing.
Yeah, I was guilty as
You
shit
bring it back
in
in,
college,
huh?
in high school and college. Yeah,
So
I
you
was
get a
guilty.
few inches on the outside, huh?
I did it as a kid. There was an umpire in my little league in this hometown at the time that he was game to what I was doing. And some of the older guys from the Kiwanis, they were in their 70s. And you start talking to them, and you could just, and I would watch Johnny Bench and Manny Sanguine and these guys. And I could watch a game as a kid and watch them frame a pitch. They
Absolutely.
didn't talk. No, just weren't talking about it. Bob Prince wasn't talking about it. But
Manny Sanguine, 0 games as a DH.
oh God, I'm just saying the pitch framing's been going on for a long time. But there
For
are
sure.
some catchers that make an art of, and I just thought
I
it
was
was
just going to
Oh,
say
for
that.
sure.
and that's
They
part of
make
the
it an
nuance of
art.
the game to me.
Tony Pena made it an art. Oh my
no
gosh!
question.
Oh,
Well, he had to.
yeah. Well, yes, but what the
Terry
pictures he had.
Steinbeck.
Dude,
Oh my!
Ray Fosse.
I never saw many games Ray caught because it was television, and I didn't see many games there. But
I just have the 1970 All-Star game in my mind forever. Him being buried by Pete Rose.
Inexcusable. One
Yeah.
reason why I absolutely
He's an
despise Pete
asshole.
Rose.
Yeah, he's an asshole. He's a first-rate
all-star game
He's a
for-
first-rate
it's a-
asshole. Period.
I know
It's an
that.
all-star game, for Christ's sakes.
And Ray handles that with such eloquence.
He's a great announcer.
Yeah,
He's a
I
fantastic
think, and they want to
announcer.
get rid of him. By the way,
Why?
They
He's
think
the
he's
best.
over the hill and done. I think
Why?
Ray's
I remember.
part of-
I have a
him
very,
and Korak I love listening
very,
to those two.
very dear memory of being up. Our garage was separate from the house where I grew up. Being up in the garage with my dad and him having the A's games on the radio, and you had Ray Fosse, you had Lon Simmons, you had
Lon Simmons.
Bill King.
He was the original.
Each of them would do 3 innings of the game. It was awesome.
He was
Yeah.
our gunner. Bill King
Wow.
was revered by the Oakland fans like we did Bob Prince.
Okay.
Same
Okay.
thing.
Bill King
Okay.
did all 4 sports, I believe. He did Raiders games, he did Warriors games, and I
Wow.
think he did hockey. Before the Sharks, there was a team. in
Seals.
Oakland. Maybe
The
that
Seals.
was it.
Seals.
Oakland Seals.
Mhm.
That's
The Oakland
right.
Seals
I have
became
a-
the
I have a
California
jersey of
Golden
that.
Seals.
Golden Seals. That's
Golden
it.
Seals.
That's right.
Bill King was
I play them all the time on
awesome.
NHL 21.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Bill King was Bill King's he passed away a couple years ago. Bill King's
I never
awesome.
heard of him.
He's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
For-
he
for
was,
announcing.
he was their
Yeah.
he was their out there. He was their Bob Prince.
No,
Okay.
no, no.
Yeah.
Bob
Well,
Prince was
what
your
year
Bill
did
King.
Ray Fosse go to the A's as a player?
Fosse went to the Indians afterwards, right?
Well, he was
Fosse
with-
started with the Indians.
He started with
and
the
then
Indians. He
went
was
to
with
A's.
the Indians in the 1970 All-Star game.
That's right.
And then he went to the A's. Was he on all 3 of those World Series
I
teams
think
for the
so.
A's, 72, 73, and
I
74?
think so.
Okay.
Did he make it out there by 72?
I think so. I think he's got 3.
Okay.
think-
There was this. I'll have to send it to you guys. There was this story written several years ago about how just the connection of Ray Fosse and Pete Rose. Ray Fosse grew up in the town that Pete Rose was imprisoned in. It just
Really?
the connection. It was just that neat. Those articles they read. They're
Karma.
just unique. Yeah, it was just talking about the connection between those two because of that play, and then it just went. It was just. I don't know,
Isn't it interesting
I
in
love
baseball?
reading.
No team has won 3 straight since that.
You're right. They haven't.
Yeah, the Yankees won 3 of 4.
Yeah,
but,
they did.
it wasn't
The
Three
Yankees
straight.
won.
Yeah.
So in the 70s, you had the A's 72, 73, 74. The A's won it in 77 and 78.
Yankees won it in 77.
Yankees.
I'm sorry,
won
the Yankees 77 and 78. They went to the World Series in 76, but they lost to the Reds.
Right. Right.
And then the 80s, I don't think there were any consecutive World Series victories.
I don't think so. Not in
No.
the 80s.
A's made 3 straight in the late 80s, but they only won 1 of them.
Toronto won
Right.
2 back-to-back in the early 90s.
They
right?
did in 92 and 93.
Yeah, and the Yankees won in 98, 99 and 2000.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
98?
But 3 in a row was something.
No, they won 96, 98, 99, 2000. And they lost in 2001, so they did win 3 in a row.
Okay. Okay.
98, they beat the Padres. 99, they beat the Braves. 2000, they beat the Mets. Yeah.
Yep. I remember the Subway Series, 2000.
So I guess they did win 3 in a row.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yep.
then I stand corrected.
96, they
Baseball
beat the Braves.
trivia.
I tried to think about the Yankees.
Riveting
so.
podcasting. Baseball trivia.
Speaking of baseball
that.
trivia, I have a trivia question for the two of you.
Go ahead.
What year did the Kansas City A's switch from red, white, and blue to green and gold?
The Kansas City A's. Ooh.
Were they red, white, and blue in Kansas City?
Yes, they were.
Were they?
Yes, they were.
Yeah, 'cause I
up
got-
until which
Try
year?
to look at my hat and see if there's a date on it.
Ah. They weren't gold, though, were they? The Kansas City A's weren't green and gold. They were green and white.
Green and white.
Yeah, maybe.
I think
but
the gold was added. I think when they moved to Oakland, I thought.
No, they were still wearing. They incorporated gold when they were with the Kansas City A's.
Okay.
But they may have went from red, white, and blue to green and white, and then green and gold. But what year?
I don't know. When did they move from Philadelphia?
I'll give you.
Was that in the
like 50s, 55,
Give me my
57,
Wayback Machine.
somewhere in there. Wayback Machine.
Okay, so it was 1963. Whenever they
63.
So there's a website, I believe it's through Baseball Hall of Fame. It's called Dress to the Nines. And it gives you a pictorial of all the uniforms.
Uniform expert over here.
Yes, I am. I love my baseball uniforms. It gives you a pictorial of each team and what they wore each year.
Wow.
And you can break it down by National League, by American League.
I know if you go on the Baseball Reference site, there's some stuff kind of like that too. That's cool.
Right. I love it. I look at it more than I should.
Isn't it interesting the crap uniforms that were the 70s? I mean, if you just look just at the 70s. It was just
that experimental time period.
It was experimental. It was, I guess we're coming out of the 60s, like the mod era. And
remember
then
the
they got
White Sox
disco era. That's what I'm
shorts?
getting at.
Remember that when they wore
That was
shorts?
the worst. That was in 76. That was the worst.
How did they not get their knees torn up on?
I'm sure they did. I'm sure that's exactly what happened.
And they weren't using
shorts
the same
on AstroTurf, by the way.
Yeah, and then
that's not.
And then
fun.
some of the dirt in those infields back then weren't like what they have today.
Wasn't real dirt. Yeah.
No, exactly. But they went from having really cool uniforms actually in the 60s,
more traditional.
The vests, the sleeveless, and then
Phil likes tradition, like the DH.
Yes,
and then polyester became a thing with clothing.
But who was the first team to go for that?
I have no idea.
You are a trove
Pittsburgh
of
Pirates
knowledge
were the
with
first
stuff.
team.
Polyester,
the pullover.
Late 60s, I'm guessing.
Site 1970, and it happened when the Pirates opened up at Three River Stadium, July 16, 1970.
That was the mustard gold. And
when they introduced the mustard gold hat.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right.
That particular day, they actually went out in their warm-up wearing the old jerseys, the vests, that they brought with them, just for that moment from Forbes Field.
That's the first year of Three Rivers.
Yep.
Didn't Three Rivers open like halfway into the season too?
They did in July 16, 1970.
Yeah. And I like that uniform. And when the Pirates bring that back occasionally now, it really that was a good look for the Pirates. I think.
Great look.
I think that was a good
the mustard
look.
yellow.
Yes,
I think so. But what happened in the 70s, like in the late half of the 70s, with the mix and match and all that shit. I mean, I love that. I know you do. And Oakland at the same time went through the same kind of weird mix and match crap.
They were all gold. And some.
Oh, it was just.
Even the Orioles wore all orange at one point.
And the funny part about it was, as I was going through that era as a kid, I thought it was fantastic.
Me too.
But as I look back on it now, I just
cringe.
And those pillbox hats were just the worst.
They were the worst.
They're I have one I wear to the games. They're so comfortable to wear, though.
I have the two original from the Pirates that I got from New Era, the gold one and the black one. They just sit in my closet in the spare bedroom.
They're so comfortable to wear. I will say that.
But the modernized.
Jamie keeps saying I look ridiculous, and I'm like, yeah, but
they are ridiculous looking.
But I also have that same modernized pillbox hat that they brought back for Sunday games.
Do you have any Stargell stars on your pillbox hat?
No, but we used to collect them as little kids.
Yeah.
Yes, used to be able to buy them.
The coolest Sports Illustrated cover ever is right after the Steelers won the 4th Super Bowl with Bradshaw and his helmet and his uniform, and Stargell in his uniform, and Stargell putting a Stargell star on Bradshaw's helmet.
Yes.
That's the best cover of Sports Illustrated ever. It just is. It just is.
I totally agree. Iconic.
That's what Pittsburgh. It was amazing to what this town was like. When did you move here?
I moved. I moved to Morgantown in 2005, and then up to Pittsburgh in 2009.
Okay, so I'm sure if you lived, I'm sure you've heard more stories than you care to hear about what it was like living in this town in the 70s as a sports fan. But as a little kid, I was born in '66, so when the Steelers won the 4th in '80, I was 14. I was prime. Age-wise, I was right there.
I grew up with the Niners steamrolling everyone in Super Bowls.
That was in the 80s.
I was born in '79.
Okay.
So, growing up, it was just...
The catch.
I was laughing.
You were 2 years old for the catch.
Right. I was laughing.
Watch that game on TV.
So
I remember that game.
The very first year at Duquesne, I taught sports economics. The reason I remember that's because that was the year the Niners played the Ravens in the Super Bowl. And that's the first Super Bowl they'd been to since '94 with Steve Young against San Diego.
Right.
And so there were a fair amount of Baltimore fans actually at Duquesne in general, which I find interesting. But there were some in the class and shit talking to each other, having a good time. And then the game happened and they lost, and I kind of sat back after the game and I go, you could lose a Super Bowl, like that's like that could happen.
That's how we
don't you, because the Niners always just went to the Super Bowl and usually just beat the shit out of whatever AFC team they sent over, and they won by 30. That's just how Super Bowls go, and so they lost. I'm like, you could lose these things, and then of course they lost a year or two ago to Mahomes. So I'm like, God, that's like, turns out winning a Super Bowl is a hard thing to do.
Well, that is.
We were spoiled.
We were very spoiled.
I mean, like, it was to the point where you went to the beginning of the Steelers season, just assuming I would go out and play football with my friends during the Steelers games. I wouldn't watch the regular season games because you just assumed you would come in when you were done in the fourth quarter and they were going to be winning or beating somebody.
Winning by 2 touchdowns or something.
Yeah,
right.
And my father used to go, well, why do you want to stay up on Monday night and watch these games when you go out and play all day Sunday during the game? But you want to stay and watch the Monday night game, don't you? You want to stay up late, don't you?
Legendary. Well, the Pirates were very good all throughout the 70s.
That's what I mean, yeah.
The Steelers became very good in 72, all throughout the rest of the decade. The Penguins were ass.
Yeah, there was...
Not until they got Lemieux in the 84 draft. Although they were actually pretty decent in the early 80s, and then they hit
there was a year or two. There was a year or two they were quirky.
The A's were good in the 80s, later end of the 80s. Giants were okay, too. I mean, there was the World Series that 1 year with both of them. Warriors were always horrible. That's what I always find hilarious is people that are fans of the Warriors now, because anyone that grew up in the Bay Area just knows that you need to sit back and just find it comical.
The joke was them and the Clippers.
Oh, I know. Like, the Warriors were horrible. That they could assemble like one of the better teams ever in NBA history.
They always have one of my favorite uniforms.
You know that God is laughing at you if that's the case, because it's so implausible, to believe that. They were horrible, and it was fine. I mean, it's not like we had a dearth of winning in the Bay Area. We had good football and baseball. The Warriors were just kind of the Warriors. Right. They're losing, whatever.
Right.
When I was out there for the playoff game, and my son and I were sitting talking after the loss. We're back at the hotel in a bar area. We're eating. We're just talking to locals. And a gentleman was asking about Pittsburgh, and he says, it was kind of the same out here, in the 70s. We had a lot of winning.
Yeah, A's were good.
Raiders were good.
Niners were, but we had the Raiders were there, and the Raiders. And the Steelers gave the Raiders fits and all. But the
big-time rivalry.
The point was, though, that he could speak to having, like, a lot of winning growing up.
Right.
And he goes, and he would say, so I sit and I think about these people that that are from Arizona or maybe from Florida and what their childhoods would like, because I can't imagine a childhood without winning sports around me.
Boring.
Well, the thing is, we were freaking spoiled.
Yes, we were.
And we took the losses pretty hard in this town because we weren't used to them.
Yeah,
and he echoed the same thing out there.
That's actually a very good point. How many cities had more than one team that were that successful all throughout one decade? Not many.
It can be argued that Pittsburgh. Well, you would have to say the Steelers, the decade of the 70s, the Steelers were the team of the 70s.
Oh, for sure. That's 4
out of
stone.
4 out of 10, for sure.
But the Pirates were in the playoffs numerous times.
They won 2 out of
it. They bookended it.
71
what was their
79.
playoff experience like in between? I don't know that. The Pirates in the 70s.
Okay,
obviously 71 and 79.
They usually always made the playoffs.
So
they won the pennant many times.
They won the division in 70, 71, 72, 74, 75, and then 79.
I didn't realize it was that much.
Yeah.
We almost won it in 78.
Yes, they almost
Philadelphia won it, right?
Yes, they did, because the Phillies are very, very strong from the mid-80s, or from the mid-70s in through the 80s. They were strong.
Yeah, so Pittsburgh had a huge rivalry with the Phillies for a good 5 years.
Okay.
And it come down to the stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we were kids. Was it called? This is what freaks me out. So when we were kids, I remember just calling. They win the pennant, and then there was. It wasn't a divisional playoff. It was just the playoffs. We called it the playoffs.
It was just the playoffs. It was
baseball playoffs, and they would meet.
Your league
and then the winners
series.
would go to the World Series. It was real simplified. You had 2 divisions. They'd meet, and the winner would go to the World Series.
Right.
As opposed to the 3rd division, it was at some point. Then it was a divisional round, and it got real convoluted.
That would have been after
Wild
the
card
strike,
game.
so that would have been in 95 is when they introduced that stuff.
Right.
That's also when they introduced interleague play, I believe.
95.
Because the strike was in 94, so they didn't have a World Series in 94.
I remember that. that. That's right.
And that's ultimately probably what got the Expos out of Montreal, to be honest with you. Because they were good that year.
They were
They
good
were
with the
good.
World Series that year.
Nobody was going to the games, though. Do you remember that?
They
Up
would
in
have
Montreal.
I saw there was a documentary of their last year
in
there.
the playoffs and steamrolling people, there would be people going to those games.
But the unemployment rate was always high up in Montreal throughout the 90s, because that was also a time period when Quebec was trying to secede from Canada.
Right.
And
That happens like every 5 years.
That worked.
that is
That
true.
worked
But
real
it
well,
happened.
right?
But it was
Kinda like
going on.
Texas.
It happens like every 5 years. They put it to a vote, and it's always like 52 to 48.
It's always
been
that
happening
close.
for decades. Like
It's always that close. But that was like a height of '94 when the city of Montreal was experiencing very high unemployment. They couldn't afford to go to games, but the Expos were the best team in baseball that year.
They were.
They would have won the World Series that year.
playoff baseball, but they were like
They
everyone
would've-
knows how good the
I would have
Braves
my money
were
on-
in the 90s. They had like a 7 or 8 game lead on them. I mean, they were
Yeah.
good.
Speaking of the Braves and
Speaking of.
umpiring, exactly.
You're still hung up
If
on the
there was
umpires, huh?
ever a team that got the benefit of the doubt from baseball umpires, it was the Braves.
Well, that sounds like a very scientific analysis that you've done right here.
It's very unscientific. But
I remember the Pirates. Remember that call when that 19-inning game years when the guy like didn't come anywhere close to home plate and he called him safe just because everyone wanted to go home.
Yeah.
including the umpires.
Yeah, like, okay, we're done. We're out of here.
Can't blame the guy.
Well, I mean, was Maddox as great of a pitcher as he actually was had
Yes.
he not been given the benefit of the doubt? I mean, there's got to be.
think he was a
there's part-
tremendous pitcher.
I think he was too.
All
There's
right,
a part of it he was getting the benefit of the doubt. I think.
Who was their catcher
In
at
the
the
strike
time? I
zone.
can't remember. Who was their catcher in the 90s?
Oh,
Damon Berryhill? No,
Man, where'd you
no,
pull
no,
that
no,
name
no.
out
It
of
was
your ass?
Javi Lopez, wasn't it?
Javi
Lopez.
Yep.
He had to have been framing as well as Bench did in the
part of the
70s.
game, man.
It's
They
part of
have
the
to.
game.
It's the
part
art
of
that we
game.
talked about earlier as a catcher.
And
It's
also
the tradition, Phil.
a
It
pitcher,
is a
a
tradition.
pitcher is also.
but he did a good job of
But
it.
successful long-term pitchers also, there's a gravitas they acquire, and they get the benefit of the doubt. That's part of it too, wouldn't you agree?
Yes, and I mean, even within the game, if you're around the zone, you're more likely to get calls on the edge.
But I wonder
for any pitcher.
if
Like,
he-
of course, Steve Carlton's a good example of that. I
Well,
think.
yeah. But I wonder if Greg Maddux had that same benefit of the doubt when he was with the Cubs before he went to the Braves.
He won a Cy Young with the Cubs.
Yes,
I mean,
he
was
did.
good.
Yeah, but that's why he was younger then too.
Right.
People forget. I mean, he was a joy to watch pitch.
Oh, he was
People
fantastic
forget when
to
he was
watch.
young, he could hit. He could get 95 if he needed 95. Like,
Yeah.
he
But his
I mean,
he was a painter. He would get painted.
Yes.
like
Did
this.
you see
He
that?
was.
The joke they pulled on Chris Bryant with Greg Maddux.
No.
So it's on YouTube. It's really funny. The general gist. So one year, they pulled a prank on a community college. He's from Nevada, so maybe it was out in Vegas somewhere. A community college. The coach comes out to the team, the community college baseball team. They go, "Oh, hey, we've got this transfer that's coming in. He's from like Germany or something. He's like abroad. And he's going to come in. Like, he's a pretty good hitter." And they're like, "All right." So they go out and they go take batting practice, and Brian's just hitting bombs, and everyone's just like, "God, this guy could really hit." And so then they show who he was and signs autographs, and everyone's happy, and everyone had a good time. So the next year, Bryant thinks he's doing the same thing to like another team, right?
Okay.
It's fun, it's all in good fun in the off season. And so they show up and they have the coach is like throwing batting practice or something like that. And they plan all of this. And the coach is like, "Oh, I got to go," or something, or "Oh, I hurt my arm," or something's like, "Oh, we need another pitcher. We don't have a pitcher." And so they have the photographer, the cameraman, is actually all dressed up Greg Maddux. And so it's like, I could try and do it. Like, whatever. And so he goes up there and just starts like, just not lasers, but like putting it where it is. And Bryant's just not doing anything. And so he starts like putting it there. And Bryant's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And the guy's like, "That's a strike. Come on, you got to swing." so like, you can't figure out what's going on. So Maddux, what did Maddux do? I think he struck him out on one of the pitches. He's like, "You want to keep the ball? You want to keep the ball down?"
Oh, my
Oh, it
God.
was great.
So
So
he
he pulls
stayed
out the
in
mask.
character. He stayed in
it was-
character.
it was
Oh, that's
It's a
fantastic.
fun watch. It's like 10 minutes long. It's pretty funny.
He is a character.
Well, I saw Chris
Yeah.
Bryant posed as a pizza delivery guy a few years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He seems to be up for having a good time
He
with
is.
people. He seems like
He
a
is.
good guy. He's from Vegas. He was in high school around the same time as Harper. Harper went pro, and then Bryant went to the University of San Diego, I think, is where he went.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Who's the character on the Reds, or was on the Reds? I think he might have got traded. Who was the most real outspoken? He started a podcast a couple years ago. Kind of was very got in some entanglements with the union. Who's the player? It's the mouthpiece. Oh,
Votto? No.
it wasn't
He's
Votto.
still with
Was he a
him.
pitcher or a hitter?
Maybe he's a pitcher. It won't come to me. He's got his own show.
Oh, was it Bauer? Trevor Bauer?
Trevor Bauer.
Oh.
Yeah.
He's with the Dodgers now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's very outspoken.
Very outspoken.
He's gone rogue a few times.
Isn't he a physicist also? Wasn't he a physics student in college?
I went to UCLA with Garrett Cole. So Cole was drafted first that year, and Bauer was drafted third.
Yeah.
That must have been quite a clubhouse, by the way.
I can only imagine. Jeez.
Wow. Very interesting.
Yeah.
I know Bauer's big into like analytics and like spin rates and stuff, and working on his mechanics to like improve his. I give him credit for that. I mean, he's improved himself and tweaked his.
Sports Illustrated wrote a great article about him a couple years ago, and he was actually with the Indians at the time, I believe.
Okay.
That's who he came up with.
And it was everything that Matt just said. You know, spin to the ball, to other algorithms of his wind up, everything. He's that detailed. Kind of like how Bryson is in golf. You know, he was also a physics guy when he's a Southern Methodist,
right?
And he just takes every aspect of his swing, the grip, the size of the club, if it's a driver, whatever it is, and he's always experimenting all the time. Always.
That's impressive.
And they're using the science to it, the physics to it, which is super, super, super cool.
Yeah.
Well, they should be. It's available. It's available.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how has the Astros drama aged now?
I hadn't heard of this until like a couple days ago when a friend texted me this, but I guess the new nickname for them is the Trastros, which
I love it.
Trash cans everywhere in every city.
They got a pretty rude welcome at Yankee Stadium a couple weeks ago.
Yes, they did. That was just this week, actually.
I think it was the pitcher for now, Yu Darvish was saying this week that he thinks their World Series title should be taken from them. It's to be honest with you, that whole thing has lasted longer than I thought it would.
Yeah, it's not going away anytime soon.
The funny part about it was I think a lot of those around the organization thought that the pandemic would serve them well.
People don't forget.
It's only delayed.
Yeah,
that's all it did was delay.
I have to admit, I'm surprised by that. I thought, everything is so short these days in the world in general. You know,
baseball fans are different than other sports fans.
People can forget anything, and I'm just surprised that it's lasted that long.
We're in a forgiving society as a whole, but nobody's forgiving the Houston Astros for what they did.
Yeah, and for us it's tough because they're in our. That's the team we start every year. Just not an Astros fan. I used to I remember.
I'm not used to them being in the American League.
I'm not used to them being good
either.
I'm not used to them being good. I remember when they first came over to American League, and I remember watching Oakland beat up Tony Sipp one game like 14-2 or something. It was just a typical Astros experience. But then to see them get good, you step back and like, wow, they're pretty stocked. But then to see what they did.
And let's not forget too that, and as people can forget things, it was the Astros that were on the other side of this whole sort of scenario. When it was the Cardinals that had like the passwords to their stuff and were breaking into their computers, getting all their information about trades.
Yes.
So it was everyone. Not so long ago it was the Astros on the other side of that.
But people forgot about the Cardinals, though.
If somebody
Cardinals said a bad word, I don't like the Cardinals.
My boy was in love with them as a kid, and it just drove me. That's when Pujols was playing for them, and my son was just Cardinals. Cardinals. I was just like, I can't take a kid.
It's just.
Oh, that's a cult.
It's a big time cult. There's always more
I'm
Cardinals
really
fans.
holding my tongue. Yeah, I'm not going to say anything more.
Yeah.
Well, there's no question that the Cardinals draw, and they draw because of their location,
They draw
and the
well.
excellence of the organization as it's run.
They are definitely one of the better organizations in baseball.
And they got a multi-state draw there.
As a media market, aren't they like comparable to Pittsburgh-ish?
Yes. I would think so.
Just like in terms of like metro area size?
I think so. But look what the Louisville team does. Their AAA team is just still Louisville. They used to draw like an MLB team.
Do they really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Actually, they're
was it Louisville I'm talking about?
Now their AAA team is Memphis. The Memphis Redbirds. Used to be the Louisville Redbirds. Now it's the Memphis Redbirds.
Am I thinking of Louisville? Who was the number one AAA team that they had down there?
I don't know.
Must have been Louisville. They would sell out. We can't get our Pirates to come anywhere near a sellout,
Well, if you restrict how many people can go in, then you might get pretty close.
We might get close to a couple sellouts this year.
Louisville is actually a very good sports town without having any major league teams.
Yeah.
It really is.
Is it that? How far is Louisville from Cincinnati? Is it just across the
river?
River,
Right?
yeah.
Is that right?
No,
No, no.
not
Louisville's
quite.
a little more west.
Okay.
Who's directly across the river in Cincinnati?
Covington.
Covington. That's
Yeah,
right. That's right.
Kentucky.
That's right.
Yeah, so but Covington's a lot more east than
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's still not that far away either. At the same time,
Sure.
You know,
But no, with the basketball team there, and their football team when I was in grad school was actually pretty decent too.
right.
So, what has it ever been determined exactly what they did? I mean, has proof been thrown on the table, and have there been exposés? Because there's all these accusations that Altuve was mic'd up and was not letting him pull his shirt off, and that he would dispute that. Has anything factual ever come out?
Well,
of
it was that interview with, was it Mike Fires? Is that who it was?
Yeah, Fires
When
blew
he
it open.
Right.
Okay.
So, insofar as we believe what he said, then that's on the record, or at least whatever was said.
His
Well,
account.
well, what did he say out there hitting the trash can, right?
Just the cameras synced in to the back in the hallway, like in the dugouts, and to
Right.
relay the signs with the trash can. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, but in terms of what Altuve was wearing,
I'd heard about the microphone thing too. I can't recall exactly how that got filtered in, but I do know if you listen to someone went and did a website on this and linked to all the clips of the video and stuff of like all the times you could hear the trash can. It's
Who was he mic'd to?
extremely audible.
So he's
it
mic'd
could
to
be
the person-
someone like near the camera that would just be in your ear.
Yeah, and then
Telling you what's
that
going
person
on.
was in charge of the trash can then, or
I feel like the trash can and the microphone might have been two separate things. But
so the trash
okay.
can's getting hit, and it's just the noise that's out there. And
Was it-
the
but
players
I'm-
had to pick up on that, or was there a?
was it even a microphone, or was it like something that would like buzz?
Oh, they had
Because
a
you wouldn't-
device on them.
Well, that's
All-
why they didn't want he didn't want his jersey. That's the rumors that he
So
didn't want
all
his
the
jersey.
players had this.
I don't know if it was all of them. I'm much less in tune with what's going on with the wires.
So
than
aren't
the trash
you
can.
surprised that there weren't more players, especially once they get traded, right, coming out against it? I mean, is the union that tight that they're not?
I could
Because
see
they're shitting on each other now during the argument for it, right? You have some players that hate that team. I mean, despise
It's
them.
interesting. Yeah, it is interesting.
if you're on that winning team, you played for that team, and you have a bond with your teammates, and you cheated. I don't think you're just going to come out and say, "Oh yeah, we totally cheated, and this is how we did it." They're going to keep that as quiet as possible.
Fires did it, right?
Is he the one that had
I
the letter
think
B
he
for
was-
his beard? Is that
no, it's a different.
Okay.
I think that's Hendricks.
Okay. Did you ever see that picture?
Wait, what happened?
The guy like shaved his beard to look like a curl. Remember on the A's?
That was Fires.
That was
that
Fires.
Oh,
That was
I thought it
Fires.
Hendricks. Okay, well, I guess it was Fires. Yeah.
That was Fires.
I think the reason he said something is he like left Houston like they were mad at each other. Like he wanted
Okay.
to still be there. I think
Yeah,
was the
an axe to
impetus for
grind.
that. Yeah.
So then he would definitely come out and say, "This
but
is what
I
happened."
could see players simultaneously not liking that, but also feeling enough solidarity with their fellow players that they don't want to be the person known as telling on everybody else.
Right.
You know, because I mean, look how long people were doing roids for, and no one came out. Until
Yeah.
Canseco retired, basically.
Look at the Black Sox from 1918.
So the union.
I mean, there's a
unionization
history
is pretty-
of cheating in this game.
I mean,
Obviously.
this all got fleshed out like clearly. You know, the issue everyone had with it was that it was not between the lines. That was the issue, was using the cameras. No one at all in baseball, in the least, has any problem with someone at second base trying to steal signs. None.
but
That's been going on since
Precisely
forever.
the tradition,
Yeah.
right?
And
Tradition.
that's between the lines.
Tradition.
Though. That's not bringing
Right.
external devices into the
and that
circumstance.
Right.
was the issue.
Well, yeah, the technology.
And it's so fascinating to me because, you know, you have that, and then you cross to the other big sport, which is football, and there's all this technology interfering with the game all over the place.
Talk to the Patriots about that.
Yeah, but here's the crazy part about that. Yes, I understand what the argument is there, but again, there's all this technology already introduced into the game.
Right.
So now they're taking upon themselves to sneak in and videotape something. Well, you know, it sucks, but I mean, it's not really too far of a stretch from all the other shit that they're doing anyways.
I mean, what would stop? I mean, my
Really?
mind's mindset on the
And if you
videotaping
ask
in
me, it's
football.
easy to do. It's super easy to do. You could be like a concession worker at Heinz Field, and you're being paid by the Browns to. Or no, they don't practice at Heinz Field. You can be at the UPMC sports facility where the Steelers and the Pitt Panthers practice. You can be an employee there and be the complete mole. You know,
You just never know.
No, you don't. You don't know who's
So it was the
sporting a camera
filming
somewhere.
during the practice. That was the big thing
That was one of them.
for the Patriots.
What was the other thing they did?
What did they have?
The footballs not having, and you know,
I don't know if I'm buying all that shit, but
it was still.
yeah, I guess you shouldn't be tampering anything. You're trying
No.
to find an advantage anyway.
Right.
And if you have
I mean,
to-
if it's filming during a game, like you said, there's cameras all over everywhere. What would stop the Patriots from buying a ticket for someone and say, go film what's going on during the game? But it was during practice, I think is what it was.
It was during
wasn't it?
practice.
Yeah, that was the issue.
it wasn't above board. I'm not making an excuse for it. I'm just saying it's interesting that there's an example of baseball does not have a lot of technology being thrown into it at the
No.
same magnitude that football does. I mean, you got receivers and the quarterbacks. Hey, I mean,
yeah.
Right,
it's
yeah, the
just
quarterbacks
nuts.
mic'd in with the...
Yeah.
So
I remember when they used to take the pictures of the defense and they'd send them down the line. But now they've got the
clothespin.
Yeah, remember that? Mm-hmm. Got the tablets now that they do. It's for the same function. Remember that? They'd send them down and you'd see them flipping through.
all this technology is just insane. I mean, like there's probably a lot more going on than I even think about during the course of the game.
But I mean, you could throw that in hockey, you know, because the Penguins do practice half the time at PPG Paints Arena. They practice up in Cranberry, their new facility. But again, you can have anyone there just recording something. You don't know they're recording.
Yeah.
And they could be working for the Bruins. You know, they could be working for the Canadians. They, you know,
They really don't know. You can't
No, they don't.
vet out everybody.
no.
Okay, let's talk about hockey for a second.
Okay.
We have a big traditionalist over here, right?
That loves the DH.
Loves it. Yeah. Big
That's it.
traditionalist
Loves
I love
it.
the DH.
I'm indifferent. I'm okay with it. But we're going back to hockey, you
Okay,
said.
go to hockey. The part of I'm not the biggest hockey fan. I have workable knowledge. I'll leave it at that. But I am fascinated about the concept of unnecessary violence in sports, and that's a bigger conversation. We can have that in a second. But in hockey, what's going on right now with this Tom Wilson thing, and I didn't see any of it. I've only heard it through about
I'm in the
it
same
during
boat as you. I haven't seen any
through
of it
the
myself.
radio. I've heard what he did. I know of him. I know his demeanor. It's interesting that it appears that the players across the league do not want to address it. Their union has either got them locked down and they won't talk about it, or there's some other union code of conduct they hold themselves to. But it's fascinating that level of violence is taking place and they're not speaking out on it.
Well, that was the first of 2 games against the Rangers. And as soon as that happened, the Rangers actually had a statement that they released to the media, basically trashing Tom Wilson and his acts, okay? And then they got fined $250,000 for that statement. But they started that second game with a line brawl. Okay, if you remember the line brawl from
Hawkins did say a fight in a sporting event happens.
Imagine that. But no, I mean, right at face off, three different fights at the same time.
Now, was Wilson out there to start the game?
I can't remember, but I think he was. I can't remember.
I would hope he was.
So they just
Isn't that the point?
So they drop the
Right.
puck and then they just drop the gloves.
Or there's just a message that one team's giving the other team,
Sure.
you know, because you happen to be on Wilson's team. You're his teammate, you know. So we're going to take the game over by fighting. Essentially was what happened. And there was a total of, at one point, there were 6 guys in the penalty box for the Capitals. 6 guys.
Were they
crammed in that penalty box?
Were they socially distanced?
6 inches, maybe not 6 feet.
That's the quote of the year.
Were they socially distanced? No, but anyway, the game just got very ugly from the very beginning, and there's lots of fights that game. But Tom Wilson is a very violent hockey player. He's taken a lot of headshots on players, knee shots on players. He just has a history.
Didn't the was it the Rangers? I don't know if it was the Rangers, but didn't the Rangers also set out a statement after that said they wanted someone in the front office of the league to be fired because of how
George
they handled
Peros, who's the
something?
director of player safety,
Yeah.
who used to be a fighter himself whenever he played in the NHL, who ironically went to Princeton for his degree.
What did,
played hockey at Princeton.
What did Wilson end up getting for that?
$5,000 fine.
That's it?
That's all.
Wow.
That's all.
And the Rangers got $250,000 for calling it out. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So years ago, the when the Steelers linebacker Harrison was being fined for vicious hits. This predates Burfitt and all the other the other big hitters in the NFL. At that time, there was a big argument about let them play. You're over regulating the game and da da da. And I remember having some really good discussions with people, and I came to the conclusion that I would be okay. Not speaking of football, but speaking of hockey and speaking of baseball and basketball, those three. Because I don't know how you would do this in football because it's a violent game by nature. But why is it necessary that there is any kind of fighting or violence, unnecessary violence, or in baseball or hockey for that matter, or basketball? Because yes, you're gonna have contact, but in terms of like stopping play and then going out and just. Why is it tolerated is my point. It shouldn't be like home plate collisions should not be tolerated. Second base collisions, there's no reason in playing the game of baseball. Give me a reason outside of circumstances where you have to tag a player. Give me another circumstance where two players have to physically touch each other in the course of play. Where is that required?
Not in baseball.
Right. And because it's not required to play the game, that if any contact with any two players outside of tagging a player happens, that should be stopped immediately. It should not be tolerated. You don't need to have home plate collisions because you got some elements of testosterone in the audience and they want to see that. Or a collision at second base and that makes baseball badass. See, I don't
going out of your way to spike somebody
buy
to break
into that. The game's too beautiful to me.
They've largely legislated it out though, because you can't have collisions at home plate anymore.
You can't.
And now at second base you have to go right to the bag.
Yes, you do.
And I think we're talking like 8-10 years ago when this first came up. I think that's all healthy. Basketball, the same thing. I think if you fight in the NBA, you're going to pay for it, right? If you start,
I would imagine
there's actually the rule in the NBA, which is surprisingly effective to me, is if you leave the bench, you're like automatically suspended.
Okay,
it's like a big thing.
But in hockey, we have accepted fighting as part of the game
since forever.
Right. So again, and I'm not a diehard hockey fan, so maybe I don't have the quote unquote right to have a voice in the argument. But it seems irrational to me that we would legitimize fighting in this game and then pretend like it's not. You see? I mean, look, when two players start swinging, the referees right on the ice.
Yeah,
they're kind of around there, but they don't go in there and break it up till at least a minute or two until they kind of
let them tire each other out.
I mean, they're letting the fans watch it because that's part of what the fans came to see. That the NHL endorsed that behavior. Why is it tolerated at all? That's my question.
Because it always has been.
Yeah, it's just kind of like I think where we ended up with regards to hockey. I'll absolutely attest to this from a fan perspective, and I'm kind of like you with hockey. When the Sharks come out, I'll go and watch the Sharks play, and that's about it. We had tickets for a hockey game several years ago. It was on Jamie's birthday, so she didn't want to go to a hockey game. Fine, so we gave them to someone else, and we gave them to our friends, and they're pretty good seats. They're like down the glass, and Sidney Crosby got in a fight right in front of him that game, and I'm like, I would love to see that. Like he scores goals all the time. He never gets in fights. That would be awesome. So no, hockey fights are fine by me. I think the rationale is if we outlawed fighting, would the play get sufficiently dirty that people would try and have dirty hits and stuff like that to met out any frustrations I would have with you, as opposed to.
But can't you regulate that out of the game?
They
could.
You
could.
Look, traditional Canadian hockey, right?
Yeah.
Olympic hockey.
Would you have a better product at the end of the day? And
no doubt about it.
Might not.
If you have pure sport,
it's possible.
But they're never going to get rid of it.
The bloodlust of the American sports fan, though.
Unless somebody actually dies in a fight, if you hit your head and you're paralyzed or something, because that's the only thing I worry about in watching a hockey fight.
Of course,
is okay. If they're going to let these two guys slug it out, let them slug it out. And yes, it's fun to watch. Let's not lie. But when
I don't find it fun.
I always did, but I grew up in the Civic Arena going to games my whole life, So I remember when there were brawls, the teams would leave the bench.
The NHL's fine with it. That's part of this. That's part of the experience. For half an hour, you're seeing all these fights, and as a little kid, it's what you grew up with. It's like
not saying I was raised on it, but
no, I'm not assessing
but-
blame or making a moral judgment. I'm just saying, why is that necessary? It's not. It's too dangerous.
I think in today's standards, it's too dangerous because with football,
What's it teaching kids?
Well, it's not teaching them anything, but
It's teaching them something.
full violence. But
You think?
No, but the thing is, you have with concerns with concussions now.
Of course.
So, but we weren't concerned about concussions 20 years ago. In the 70s, I didn't know what a concussion was until maybe
It's called progress.
Yes, we're progressing as human beings, and it's reflecting in sports now. That's why they got rid of the home plate collisions, because Buster Posey had a massive concussion that almost knocked him out of the game completely. Justin Morneau, he had a collision at second base that he hit his head. He lost his helmet. He hit his head against the second baseman's or the shortstop's knee and was severely concussed,
But you don't need that violence to play the game of baseball. That was my argument. You need violence to play football the way it's
because that's the game. That's the game. It's
But
a fast game and it's a physical game.
I see it more of like self-regulation versus the league coming in top-down.
Right.
Because if you look in baseball, for decades, people police themselves. You hit one of our guys, we hit one of your guys, it's taken care of on the field, doesn't boil over, that's that. Right? Now baseball's come along and now you've got umpires giving warnings for this or that, and now it's much less clear about how these things are equaled out. Right? Like, you hit one of our guys, now there's warnings, so I know I'm going to get thrown out, so I got to wait till the next game to try and hit you first. It makes things a lot muddier. I think in hockey, you could try and outlaw fighting, and maybe they will after one of these things happens that you're talking about, but I don't think it's entirely clear that it's just because you make a law outlawing something doesn't mean it's ever
If
going to
they
go away.
eliminated fighting from the game, it wouldn't bother me. I would still watch the game of hockey, because if you think of it, Olympic hockey, no fighting.
That's my argument.
And then when you get into the Stanley Cup Finals, you can't afford to have anyone in the penalty box. It's like every game really
that's
counts.
what cracks me up. You see them. You see them playing
in the regular season.
Clean. It's amazing how clean they play then.
Sure.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
I don't know. I think
even
it's
that cheap shot, you can't get away with it anymore because you butt in somebody just to try to jab at them. And if there's
I think
a ref
it's a
right
solution
there,
in search of a problem, to be honest with you. But
it's true. Maybe
that's my sense on it.
Yeah.
But it is fun to watch people fight in hockey. Let's be honest.
Of course it is.
I don't get it.
Again,
though.
I made a reference to
I'll
NHL
explain
21.
it to
I
you.
always have to have at least one fight each game when I play hockey on.
So if you don't get it, I'll explain it. Two people throw
I'm
their
not a
gloves
boxing
down.
fan either, though.
Two
so.
people throw the gloves down and they start punching each other, and that's what's happening in fighting.
See, that's the bloodlust, and that's why I like MMA and stuff like that. It took me a long
like
time to
it.
kind
MMA,
of like.
MMA
boxing.
doesn't do a lot for me. I don't know.
I mean,
doesn't do a
I
lot
I
for
like
me
boxing.
either.
Boxing's
I have
cool.
some friends now through the show that are MMA fighters. I've enjoyed watching them and talking to them, but it's real the pure violence of it's hard for me to stomach. I will be honest with you.
That's
it's hard for me to
okay.
stomach.
That's okay.
MMA doesn't do a lot, but I like boxing.
I've always loved boxing. I mean, again, we were raised on Muhammad Ali, George Foreman.
Yeah, I'm not discounting it. I'm just I don't know why. I don't think baseball's better off with collisions at second base, first base, or pitchers intentionally throwing at batters and things. I don't think the game is better. I'm not getting on a pedestal. I'm saying the game is not better. And raising my son and having to explain when he was very young, like why batters were getting hit and things like that, and he intentionally threw at him, Dad, because and I didn't like. It gave me an uneasy feeling in my gut when I had to legitimize that to me. I don't know.
Right.
I had the right answer, maybe.
Sure.
I don't know.
Sure.
And the game is not enhanced by that. I mean, it's just not baseball anyway. I can't speak to hockey. Maybe it's better with fighting. I don't know. I mean,
Again, if they got rid of it, I wouldn't steer me away from watching the game. But there's some added element to when two guys who just don't like each other are going to drop the gloves and go at it for a couple minutes.
But they drop the gloves, and it's like the NHL kind of endorses it. Like
They always have.
This whole other thing happens. Like other players kind of like lay around, or they and then they take a break and they get their water, but they're drinking water over there, and then the referees kind of like just dance around them for like a minute or two. And then they try to separate them.
Well, I have a good friend from high school. Her and her husband live in Utah now, and their daughter plays competitive ice hockey. And they go to Colorado. They go to other states that are nearby that have these teams. They're always like playing in these tournaments. But I always say to Tracy, make sure your daughter scores a Gordie Howe hat trick. You know, the goal, the assist, and then that
Get the fight, yeah.
Could you imagine? Now, answer me this question. So, soccer is the football of the world.
Football.
Right? So, we know of some crazy fights in the stands with but in terms of the actual players, how often do soccer players really go to fisticuffs?
It's rare. It's rare,
isn't
they
it?
They push each other
Isn't
around, but they don't actually throw punches.
Isn't that interesting?
I was watching one of the games earlier this week online. It must have been the Man City game, PSG. It got a little bit crazy there for a little bit, lots of slide tackling, a lot of very, very close calls, some were very obvious yellow cards.
They really won't punch each other.
Yeah, because they're coming up high, those they're being stepped on with those spikes. That would hurt, I mean, there's no question in my mind that would hurt, but it was getting a little bit dicey. And then I think there was like a questionable handball that was not a handball, and they start getting arguments with each other about that. They're just but they don't actually punch each other in the face because they're going to get a red card. They're going to be thrown out.
There's a lot of lobbying
because
that goes
the game
on.
won't let it happen.
The game won't let it happen.
Right.
There's a lot of lobbying probably here. That's what frustrates me most about soccer. A lot of lobbying with the umpires.
Always lobbying with the umpires. But that's part of the game too.
Does it ever turn? Do they ever overturn their decisions?
Perhaps it might influence them in future decisions.
Yes.
That happens though.
Which happens in every sport
in the
too.
NFL a lot.
All the time in the NFL.
When it comes to like the defensive secondaries, especially, right?
Faking of things in soccer, like.
Of course there is.
I'm going to pretend I got
flopping,
tripped.
But that happens in basketball.
I'm going to pretend
Basketball's got that.
Basketball has that.
Don't pretend you're hurt in basketball. I'll give you that.
And then there's Ben Roethlisberger.
Oh, yeah. Throws an interception, suddenly he's hurt, yeah.
That must be a thing about Pittsburgh quarterbacks, though, because Bradshaw was a notorious...
He was always hurt, it seemed like.
Was he?
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
He's had a share of concussions, though.
Yeah,
he's been hit in the head many times, and all those guys.
How much acting goes on in sports? There's an element of it. There's an element of it.
If you rank them by sport, soccer's number one for sure. Basketball's probably number two.
I don't watch a lot of soccer, so that happens a lot. In terms of like being fouled, is it soccer?
Well, there's a lot of fouls that take place, but I think there's a lot of acting that takes place too in a game of soccer. By
like
the
what
players.
Do you mean? Like they're hitting each other and one's falling down like he was like basketball.
Yeah. Basically, they lay there on the pitch longer than they should. Just get up and go after the play.
I think there's a cultural aspect to that across some countries, and I think the United States is conditioned to like not act like that, and I think that's an absolute competitive disadvantage when they play in international tournaments.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I never saw it that way, but that sounds very, very accurate, Matt.
So the theatrics of the game is
theatrics is made. Theatrics is giving it too much credit. You're making like it's something to
the fakery.
The fakery. There we go. That's better.
The fakery.
Theatrics has a positive spin to me. We need to make sure it has a negative connotation.
Yeah.
We don't, outside of football, I mean, obviously basketball, I guess, has an element of that too. But you know what? Hockey has some of that nonsense too, right?
Well, when someone gets hit in the face with a stick, they're always looking for blood. See, they try to get that player in for 4 minutes instead of 2. Maybe they might bite their lip a little bit and, and then now you got a 4-minute long power play instead of 2 minutes.
I guess my overall point was I just don't understand the necessity for violence's sake in sports that don't require it. Like I don't. Baseball is not a violent sport outside of the act of the bat hitting the ball, but that's not. That's not really human violence.
When was the last time you saw 2 golfers go at it?
Happy Gilmore, maybe.
Yeah.
Happy Gilmore. Yeah.
Has there ever been any incidents on a professional golf?
If there have
tournament,
been,
like
it's
2
been
guys
since
go
forever.
at it.
I feel like I heard a couple years ago people jawing at each other, but maybe I'm just
really
not fighting.
I'd
just
love to see or tennis. Imagine like
oh yeah, tennis. John McEnroe.
Yeah, but it wasn't. It's usually against the umpires.
Yeah,
but they're called umpires, referees, or lines. What do they call them?
I think they're umpires. Sit on top of that high table,
and then it's the
high
line judge is the one that's behind.
Judge.
Yeah,
but it's the umpire that's up top.
But like the opponents don't really go at it, right?
I feel like
I would love to see.
I feel like there was a match
great.
where Sampras and Courier were yelling at each other. I feel like I saw some documentary about that.
It wouldn't
yelling at
surprise
each
me.
other across the net.
Very competitive tennis players.
Very rare. Very rare.
Really?
Obviously.
Or golf. That would be amazing.
You stepped on my lie. How dare you?
2 PGA pros going. I would laugh my ass off, man.
Who's going to break it up? The caddies?
We have to go look and see that there has to be
YouTube golf fights. Is that what?
YouTube golf fights.
I like it. I'm going to look that up later.
To your memory, what's the worst on-field baseball fight you can remember?
Worst in what
Or
way?
like breakdown or
Probably when who was it? Who was it? Roseboro that went after Marichal with the bat, like
The
in the
60s.
Oh, I've heard of that.
1960s.
Never seen footage of that.
I don't know if
Pictures.
there's.
I've seen pictures of it.
I'm not sure there's footage. Everything
One
before
Marichal
like
went after with his bat. Went after whoever the pitcher was for the Dodgers. I don't know who the pitcher was.
maybe the catcher was Roseboro,
Maybe
like trying to hold him back. Maybe?
Yeah.
Something like that.
yeah. But Marichal went after him with his baseball bat. It was like in 1965 or 1966.
Okay,
That would be
in
yeah.
more recent times. What like? There's been some like there was the big fight at second base, right?
There's
There
been some
was-
doozies. How about the 73 playoffs, the Reds and the Mets, when Buddy Harrelson and Pete Rose won it? That was a doozy.
That was a big. That's
That
a
was
legendary
huge.
fight.
That's a-
Remember when
Very
Odor just
much.
went up and smacked Batista in the face?
That's the one.
That was a good one.
That's
and then
the one.
also last year when Laureano went after the coach for the Astros, remember he was like at first base and he like ran right over.
Ramon did, yeah.
Laureano. I
That's
forgot about
right.
that.
That's right. I forgot about that as well.
I remember being at a Giants game at Candlestick Park, and it was like, oh hell, what was it, like Brotherhood Day or something like that? And both teams were out on the field before the game, like kind of together and doing a thing, and they got in a fight like in the third inning.
You gotta be kidding me.
I remember that distinctly. Sean Dunston charging the pitcher.
Sean
Oh, my.
Dunston.
But the
That was
Reds
awesome.
and the Pirates have had their share of fights over the past decade.
Yes.
Those teams really don't like each other.
No,
the Reds and the Cardinals
No.
go at it quite a bit. They don't like each
The
other.
Reds and the Pirates in the mid '70s were a little testy.
Yes,
too.
they were.
They were
Yes, they
testy. I remember watching.
Well, that was the best rivalry in baseball back then.
It was
Oh, and you had A-Rod and Veritek. Remember that?
very much so.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's been some memorable ones.
Oh yeah, the Yankees and Red Sox had their more than their share of fights.
I think
Basically brawls.
there was I think in the playoffs in the mid '70s there was a big fight. The year Louis Tiant was pitching for
The Red Sox probably.
Wow, fight in the playoffs.
Yeah, there was. I remember the ultimate meltdown that I remember. And there's been plenty of meltdowns, but the ultimate meltdown I remember was Joaquin Andujar.
With the Astros.
No, he was pitching for the Cardinals.
Okay.
And it was the '85 World Series that they lost against
Kansas
the
City.
Royals. Right.
and he was getting just annihilated. I guess Kansas City was pouring it on in Game 7.
Yeah,
I think
after
they-
that call, it's just the floodgates opened.
And then they brought Joaquin to kind of mop that up, and then
Yeah.
he started just throwing. That was the biggest. If you can, I have the video. I believe I don't have the videotape of that. It was just astonishing. I mean, he just went absolutely. I've never seen a player get completely unhinged. It was like he was
Wow.
on something,
May have been.
and he just like lost it, man. I remember going.
Those were the cocaine years in baseball too.
I
so-
know.
That could have been.
Speaking of on something, I know there was a start that Doc Ellis had, not the no-hitter on LSD, but there was another start where he was upset at the other team for some reason,
Cincinnati Reds.
and he said he'd go out there and hit every single batter, and he hit like the first 4.
That was in 74,
Yeah.
1974. Doc Ellis did it. Hit Pete Rose, Tony Perez. I can't remember who else was. Probably I don't know where Johnny Bench was hitting in the lineup back then. If he was batting third or not, but yeah, he hit all 4.
I remember being a little kid and my father taking me to the first game I've ever saw, and it was the Pirates versus the Mets, and John Matlack was pitching. It was 72.
You have been dropping some names of some guys today. I'm
Yeah.
Yes.
impressed. This
I
has been
can remember
enjoyable.
and Matlack was pitching, and Duffy Dyer was the catcher for the. That was
the
the
Mets at
battery.
the time.
That was the battery for the Mets.
At the time, yes.
But my father got me these crazy seats through work. We were down on the rail, and I remember Doc Ellis came out before the game was like walking around. The players will come out and mingle with fans. And he had curlers in his hair.
He always did that.
Yeah, and I guess that was a thing for
That
him.
was a
But-
thing for him.
and then
I
he
did
was
not know
carrying a shower cap and
Yep.
his glove,
Yep.
and he had curlers. And as a 6-year-old, the only person I ever seen curlers in her hair was like my mother or my grandmother. or something.
Grandmother, yeah.
I'm like, Dad, and my father said, "Don't look over there. Don't stare at. Don't stare at him." But it's like we were right there. I mean, this guy had curlers in his hair.
Yeah, he
just
was
the
doing that in the early
craziest-
70s. Yep.
It was just the craziest thing to see, man. In the 70s. And then I remember very, very lividly just moments. My father came home in 75, and I was all ready to sit down and watch the All-Star game. And father goes, "We're going to the All-Star game." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" he had got 2 tickets to the All-Star
That was
game.
74.
Or 74.
Yeah.
So as an 8-year-old, I knew
Yep.
like every.
My
I mean,
dad
it
was
like,
at that All-Star game in
We
1974.
were way up there, but it was just amazing
That's
to watch.
awesome.
I would love to go to an All-Star game. I've never had the chance.
I did. I was at the 94 All-Star game.
Yeah,
at,
I would love
the old
to.
Three River Stadium.
That'd be awesome.
Kenny Brett, but for whatever reason in 74, there wasn't a lot of Pirates that played in
No,
that game.
Kenny Brett may have been the only one.
I think so.
He was the only
It was
one.
a unique year for the Pirates.
Yeah.
They didn't have many players there.
I was surprised when I was in Cooperstown. They had some Doc Ellis stuff there. I think it was his like jersey from the '71 World Series, maybe.
Okay.
But I'm like, hey, Doc Ellis stuff.
Yeah.
You can't make that up. I mean, you just can't make that shit.
There's
He
also
was-
a fun
he was a
video on
unique-
YouTube
unique
about it's like
human being.
animated. Have you seen
Oh,
that?
I've seen the anime. I've seen the
Yes.
documentary.
Yeah, I saw
right.
that.
That
That was of
funny.
the no-hitter.
Yes, in,
Yep.
in San Diego. I
Yep,
believe
and
it
so,
was. Yeah.
the as the legendary story was, he was in LA partying with his friends.
Because he wasn't supposed to pitch till the next night.
Right, and all of a sudden he realized, oh my God, I'm pitching tonight.
I think they scratched him when and moved him up or something like
Something
that.
happened.
Yeah.
Something goofy happened. He had to somehow get down from LA to San Diego. I don't know what traffic was like back then, not like today out there, but he got there in time. And like you said, he was on PCP or LSD.
It was LSD.
LSD. And,
He didn't rip his arm off. He was on LSD.
Oh boy! And he throws a freaking no hitter.
Yeah, he walked like 8 people that game.
Yes, he
too.
did. He walked a lot of
Must
people.
have thrown like 150
It
people.
was
I
like
would
that Randy
imagine-
Johnson no hitter he threw in the '90s, where he walked like 10 people, still had no.
There's
still no-hitter.
anecdotal
Yeah.
stories about that game where like the catcher went to throw him back the ball and he thought it was like attacking him, so he like dove out of the. I mean, there's
There's actually footage of that.
I never saw that footage.
There's
because-
footage of that. You can look that up. That's true.
I've never seen
doesn't
that if that's the
surprise
case.
me.
Whenever I'd read about it,
He ducked or something like that. And there's
games-
footage of that.
Wow.
like you had physical footage of games. It's not on hard drives back then. It was like the physical reels, and just to save space at all the news stations and stuff.
Oh, they would
or-
go
or
over.
They throw them all out. So I've
Jeez.
heard there's no video of that, but
There's video of that.
send it on over.
We gotta
I'll
see
find it. I'll find it. There's
Please
video
do.
of that.
That's awesome.
The
That's-
I would love to see that. I would 100. I would watch that
what's
too.
so
right now.
cool to go back is like even it was amazing the jump when videotape became a thing, and I want to say that was like 67, 68. It finally was introduced when they went from the Super 8, I guess, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
16 millimeter, whatever it was,
Right.
to videotape. The clarity difference was so impressive
Oh,
because some of those
yeah.
early video, if they really refined that with today's technology, it's amazing how good that stuff looks.
Well,
Like
MLB
watching
Network-
Super Bowl. Watching the Jets Super Bowl, so it was the Super Bowl 3,
Super Bowl 3.
Yeah.
which would have been 70.
69.
69.
Oh, was it
January
69?
69.
Okay.
The NFL Films has put out the rebroadcast of that. It is so flipping clear.
Wow.
It's unbelievable.
That's cool.
Yeah, the
Really
Jets
cool.
versus the Colts.
Yeah.
Broadway Joe Namath.
Yeah, I mean, so and you can go back on MLB Films and see the video. Where it gets screwed up is when they take those videotapes and then they put it in, then they convert it to film for some of those, and it gets kind of hazy. But if you can see the actual video broadcast of those games, it's really
It is
that's
very,
nice.
very, very
impressive.
good.
It's
Yeah,
like
it's cool.
clear,
It's very good
man,
video.
like really
Wow.
clear. It hasn't degraded over time and gotten fuzzy. It's 480p, but it's.
It's still pretty good.
Yeah, it's really
Wow.
I guess it depends on how that particular film was, because I guess when they were doing those, no one could look this far in the future and say, "Hey, these are going to be really valuable."
I know.
Right.
I know.
Or even, I mean, just imagine the real storage costs of those things. Video is nothing now. I mean,
Right.
it's nothing. But back then, they had you had to keep the physical reels of stuff.
I think you're
And,
saying
a lot of stuff got
well,
lost.
MLB
because of that.
supposedly, I think
Right.
MLB only goes back to '97. I think now with every single inning of every game on video, but
That seems late.
beyond that, beyond they started in '90. They have everything back to '97, but games prior to that, there are games that they just don't have.
Jeez.
Anywhere. Which
Now-
is crazy, but they don't have them.
Sure.
MLB Network did show Game 7 of the 71 World Series from start to finish.
And that was in video.
That was in video.
It wasn't
So a lot
film.
of the playoff
But it
stuff
was-
they'll have. It's just like the regular season
But
stuff.
it was
they
still
generally
pretty
don't.
clear, though. It was.
I saw it. It was good.
I watched it, and I was like, I was getting excited. I'm like, Pirates might win this game. I felt like I was going back to 1971, which I was only 1 year. I was a year old at that time, but I was getting excited,
When all the nonsense.
Clemente had it. He won an MVP that year.
But to see
World
those
Series.
guys in a video format as opposed to a film format, because we're so used
Yeah.
to seeing older players, with film, and it's not real clear. But to see them in a video format, it's like that's like That's Bobby Clemente right there. That's just nuts.
It's crazy.
When all the nonsense started a year ago, and obviously baseball was delayed, Major League Baseball Network started showing older games, which was awesome. But I can't believe they wouldn't. What I wanted them to do is pick a good series and then just play all the games throughout the day.
That would have been great.
That would have been awesome.
Yep.
You can get the dynamics and the back and forth of a great series in a day.
Right.
Oh, it'd been awesome.
I mean, just the broadcast of those games and just listening to like when the Red Sox, they didn't win obviously, but the year that Louis Tiant was a phenom, was it 77 against the Dodgers, 78, 76?
Is it 75 against the Reds?
75 against the Reds, I think.
Maybe that's what it was then.
That was the same year Carlton Fisk hit that home run in Game 6.
But watching that live as a kid, because Tiant had that spin move when he pitched
he
and all that. But just if I could go back and just watch that entire game on video, just to hear it was Kurt Gowdy, I think, and Vin Scully or who?
Maybe Tony Kubek was in.
Kubek, but just to hear the romanticize about that era, because that was part of it. The fan experience was the announcers too. It was part of it.
Right. And the games had pace. The games moved. They had pace.
And I was amazed at how you go back and watch football from the 70s, even part of the 80s, with the pace of the football games were like the Steelers. To watch the Steelers Super Bowls now, the rebroadcast of those, it's like. And the funniest thing, if you really want to get a good laugh, go watch the 74 Steelers Super Bowl, the first one they were in, Super Bowl 9.
Against the Vikings.
In Tulane Stadium.
Yes.
And watch it from the start to finish with the announcers, the commercials. When it's over, you can hear Kurt Gowdy going, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are the world champions this year. There goes Franco Harris as he runs off the field with Bradshaw, and he turns to his... Thank you so much, and stay tuned for so-and-so's Wild West or something.
Star Trek.
I mean, but it was over, and there was nothing. There wasn't any presentation. It literally ended.
No 10-hour pregame show?
But the next year,
nothing like that.
But the next year, going into Super Bowl 10, the network and the league made a bigger deal. It was 10. And you could just see they were starting to get pre-game
Steelers versus the Cowboys.
and then there was a post-game show. I think it was that year when it all kind of started.
Yep, that would have been January '76. Yep.
Yeah, and but it wasn't until 80 or 81 when halftimes started to become a thing. You go back and you see the halftime. There was Herb Alpert and the Big Apple Band.
Yeah,
it was just
I think at the very first one, wasn't it like the USC marching band?
I think
it was. There was always marching
because it was at the Coliseum in L.A. Right,
I think it was
makes sense. It was Rose Bowl.
Yeah, but it
was a Rose Bowl. Okay,
but I think in the late '70s the halftime got broadened in terms of time.
Yeah.
But they also started having halftime shows, which became an MTV era, ushered that in. I didn't know MTV was tied in with that, but MTV's proliferation in '81 and then hitting stride in '84 coincided with there becoming actual halftime shows.
Right. Makes perfect sense.
I mean, because there wasn't anything before that.
No, there wasn't.
But the games ended so quick. It was just, and they had pace.
And you know what's nuts too is they found that footage at Bing Crosby's old place of Game 7 of the 1960 World Series.
I did not see that.
That game, as you know, Mazeroski wins it, right?
Yeah, you told me that existed. I did not go back and watch that.
10-9 game. Game took 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think
10-9 because they weren't changing pitchers left and right. You're a starting pitcher. You're expected to go the whole game,
and that's wild to watch that game.
I love that.
Me too.
No replay. Like TV replay, they don't reshow plays. You just
that's the other. Thank you. That was the other thing about watching. So you want to see something crazy? There was a very famous Oklahoma, Nebraska game, 71.
They just had that on TV recently.
ABC has it.
Yep.
And it is as clear as a bell. The video is so well preserved. Wow. It is unbelievable. But they had this crazy play at the end where it ended on a big run or something happened on that game. It ended. They won. The fans went crazy, and they cut. And thanks for watching. Have a This is a Viacom Sports Entertainment thing, and off the air they go.
Right.
The greatest play in college sports to that point had probably happened. And there was no
replay.
There was no replay.
Yeah.
There was nothing.
Wait till the evening news to see it again.
Basically, I mean, there was no Sports Center back then.
I tried. I don't know if you ever tried to explain it to B, but I tried to explain it to Austin growing up that there, what you have your sensory overload right now with all this content.
Yes. Yeah. There's too much content.
It could be. The argument can be made, I think, but there was nothing then. Replay was just
no. You talked about it. And that's what I liked about when we were talking about interleague baseball before. Back then, we got to watch highlights on This Week in Baseball on Saturday
they were
morning.
great shows, man.
Mel Ellen hosted it.
Just the music alone was great.
Yeah, the music alone was great. And then that's when you got to see, the Yankees beating up on the Red Sox in 1978 or something like that. But that's the only time that we saw American League Baseball was on that show.
You are so right. But the one thing that infuriated me, and I learned early about West Coast, East Coast, big city versus small city, was that those were typically dominated by the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Mets. Once in a while the Cardinals. But seeing the Pirates featured on This Week in Baseball, as good as we were, wasn't going to happen.
No.
And we got our new we got our, and Phil and I are dating ourselves, but we got the bulk of our baseball news as a kid through the sporting news.
Yes.
But that would come a week later.
Yeah.
And but for our brains, it was still current.
It was still current.
Yeah, but now sporting news is a joke. Because I mean,
does it? I know it still exists, but it's not at the platform it used to be.
I don't know.
They still have a website.
But because everything's so instantaneous.
I think they have an app too.
And I'll tell you something else I noticed too. To go back and watch any baseball game from, let's say, 77 back. There wasn't instant replay. There was replays, but it took them a while to formulate it. So you weren't getting this questionable strike pitch. You weren't getting, anything unique that happened on that last pitch shown to you again.
I mean, you've got the little squares up there now, right? I mean, before you didn't have the square, and then you compound that with the off-center cameras. Where the hell the ball is?
Do you like all that stuff? Do you think that adds to your experience? Because I like it.
For baseball,
I don't mind the strike zone thing there.
I like it.
It's kind of, for me, quick feedback on the umpire, because I don't. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me if they're calling pitches that are off the plate strikes. Are they doing it consistently for both sides? Like that's kind of, is the zone staying similar? So it's and breaking pitches can seem, out of the zone or caught in the zone, but they're out. I do kind of like that, actually. That's fine by me. What I don't like watching baseball games with off-center cameras in center field. It frustrates me.
Oh, because it's not uniform from stadium to stadium.
The Pirates have it right over the pitcher, and it's just
nice to see.
Our tickets at the park are right behind home plate, so it's like it's nice to just see everything lined up.
Well,
some are too high too. It's like some stadium, like Houston seems to have their cameras higher.
God, I mean, I feel like old. I think it was Jack Murphy Stadium in San Diego. God, it feels like they put the camera low and behind the left fielder.
Right.
I don't know what is going on here.
At the old Yankee Stadium, they used to actually have it off center, but towards right field.
Oh yeah.
Which was really, really weird.
Yes.
You're used to having it off center, but closer to left field.
Because most pitchers are righties.
Because most pitchers are righties. But Yankee Stadium
You're right.
did that.
You're right.
You know
it
what?
was pretty far off center.
You're absolutely right. Now that I remember that,
Yeah.
The height bothers me too. Though, if you get somewhere too high, it doesn't look right.
I don't mind the
Cleveland used to
high.
have
Yeah, I
that.
suppose it can be too high, too low. I think it's too low.
Colorado's too high. Colorado's up a little bit
But
too.
see, if it's low, it has to be off center. Otherwise, you can't see.
Yes.
So you need. I think the Pirates have a good position for theirs. Someone wrote an article about the best camera positions in all 30 things, and they thought the Pirates were middle of the road. I'm like, I have no problem watching games at.
I think, and I give all the networks incredible props, because I think that we've really figured out how to broadcast baseball games visually in an amazing fashion.
I love
football
having that
too. I mean, that's the whole HD
all
thing.
All the sports.
Yeah, the HD is wonderful. Football tinkered 2 years ago with the cameras on the. Remember?
Yes.
They got NBC 1 week. Their major games, they put the bulk of the views with those
behind the quarterback.
Yes, and the fans went crazy.
Yeah.
It sucked. It was so.
I
bet
remember
people
that.
had played football probably loved watching that.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
But I remember watching that going to myself, what are they doing? I can't even watch this. This is annoying to me.
It was angled too. It was really weird. I didn't care
The
for
replays
it.
from that perspective are neat sometimes.
Yeah, but not live
I think
play.
that's how it should be used.
Yeah.
And once
But
in a while,
not live play.
No, because here's the thing: if you're watching the game in a format, and then it's a fourth down play, then they change the format on you, I feel like I'm getting robbed.
Right.
I remember.
I mean, like I got the experience.
When I was in Morgantown, I remember they had a national Thursday night game or something one time, and that meant that they brought in all the ESPN people that had that camera when the camera was kind of new. And I remember sitting there and looking, and they've got these huge stanchions on all four corners of the stadium, and watching that thing zip around on the lines.
That had to be
that was pretty
annoying.
cool.
That had to be annoying as crazy for those players, though. I mean, I think about what does it look like?
It never hits the camera, though, doesn't it?
No, but did you ever see how low some of those cameras are, though?
is it just they zoom in, or are they actually pretty
No,
low?
like you can see some of those cameras are on the. I mean, this was a couple years ago, so I don't know what the technology is like now.
Sure.
I think eventually they're going to go to drones. I think they're going to be playing
Of course they will.
drones over the field.
No doubt about that.
Drones over the field. And then I can
But they
see all
can
kinds
only-
of accidents happening. Oh, can you imagine?
But they can only fly down so low because if you're throwing a bomb, you don't want to hit that drone, and then it disrupts the play.
You don't think that's going to happen?
Oh,
I mean,
could
it's
happen.
definitely going to happen.
But those cameras have to zoom to get that better angle, So like you were saying. But I like for baseball, I love having the cameras in the dugout. I do like
Do
that.
the players love that? I wonder.
Hey, doesn't matter. I like seeing it as a consumer.
The Astros like having those cameras in the dugout, right?
Boom, boom.
Oh, you know what? What the MLB is forcing on these managers, and they don't like it, is these in-game.
I don't like the in-game interviews either. No, that's not necessary.
I mean, just from my little world of watching baseball, I can tell Melvin does not like it.
No.
I like it when they've
all.
mic'd up the players during the games. I really like that.
was pretty
a lot.
cool.
Do you remember when they mic'd up
Yes.
Laureano and he dropped the F-bomb? That was great. That was the best. He's playing center
Of
field.
course.
This guy's got a huge arm, right?
Yeah.
Like one of the biggest in baseball. And so they're playing whoever they're playing, and he's in center field, and they're talking to him, and there's a ball hitting the gap in left center. And Laureano's thinking he can get over there quick and maybe try to throw him out a second. So he goes, gets the ball, and he goes, that guy's so fast. And he wasn't so he threw it to third base. It was great. It was fantastic. And then
But that's the
did you see
impromptu stuff
Rizzo
of baseball.
in the
Rizzo
rundown
was
with
great.
Freddie Freeman? In the rundown with Freeman like a
Yes.
week ago?
No.
So
He was mic'd
Freeman's-
up?
Yeah, so Freeman's on defense, and Rizzo's on defense, and it's a rundown between second and third, so they must have thrown it a couple times, and Rizzo comes over to cycle to third base. He gets the ball, and he goes, they're buddies, like off the field, Frederick, like when he's running him down. It was you'll laugh. It was funny. They're both laughing.
All
It
that,
was
you
a
got to
good
figure
deal.
all that stuff goes on. The reason I don't think they can do it in football too often is the amount of vulgarity that goes on.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
and
goodness.
I don't with the hitting. I think you get a lot of muffle sound. Like I don't think. I mean, they have the parametric ones on the sidelines anyway.
Have either one of you ever had the pleasure of standing sideline at an NFL game?
No,
I did for
in the
college
NFL.
football, but not NFL.
Oh, then you probably understand a similar experience. I did one time. I was in 97 or 98, one of that time. It was a Steelers Monday night game against the Packers when I was doing some work with the Steelers, pagers, I'm dating myself.
Yep.
Now, this is 23 or 4 years ago, so imagine what it's like today. The amount of vulgarity was surprising to me that they were literally like mother effing each other in a bad. I don't mean even in like after good play, but like just like they all looked like they were hyped up on something. I'm sure they were not. I'm sure they weren't, but they looked like they were just out of their minds.
I think that's the mindset you have to get yourself into play
could
that
be.
game,
Yes,
though.
it
Yeah,
could
you
be, but-
build up that mindset, right?
So at that time, one of my clients was Andre Hastings, the Steelers, and that's him and Charles Johnson, I think, were my main folks, but they were receivers. So I was excited to see Andre catch a pass or CJ catch a pass. So I was down there, right? So first quarter, Andre gets a pass on a slant and coming right at me, and he gets hit from behind. He was running, caught the ball and was running horizontal, and they hit him, knocked him out of bounds. I don't even think the hit was even spectacular by NFL standards, but the sound of that hit, and then watching how his body reacted to that, and then hitting the turf, and then seeing him try to get up and then run back to the huddle.
Jeez.
It was the most violent thing ever in front of my eyes ever. I could not believe how, and it was a legal hit. It was just like, wow.
It's fast.
It's so fast. That's what you
Everything I
can't
hear for people that stand on the sidelines say you will not believe how big
imagine
and how
what
fast
it is.
these people
Now,
are.
that was
It's way
22
too fast.
years
It's-
ago.
yeah.
Like, I mean, the linemen are even 20 pounds heavy, 15,
Yes, they
20
are.
pounds heavier now.
Yeah.
I mean, but to see how those big guys, how fast they move, even then was
They are
amazing
incredibly
to me. Like,
fast.
there was we had was it Willis? Keith Willis was a defensive
That
end
makes
or
sense.
something
Yeah,
for that
Keith
era,
Willis.
or maybe it was someone else, but it was a big guy like that. LeVon Kirkland, maybe.
Yeah.
that was the year I think it was.
He was
And
an interior
big,
lineman, yeah.
big guy. But to see how fast he would laterally move down there, I was just like, these are not your You understand why this is the greatest of the greatest,
and-
no matter how good or bad they are within the context of the NFL. To get to that level, compared to what the pool of people were that tried, they're unbelievable.
And that's why people always mention too, whenever you think of pick who was the worst team in football? Well, who's just had the Jaguars? Okay, so the Jaguars are the worst team, and you always hear these people, Alabama could beat Jacksonville, Alabama, and then people that are understood, they're like, there's just no way. Like there's like
No.
you're not understanding.
There's a huge difference in the speed of the game, the size of the players, but
Speed and size, yeah.
But you bring up a good point, because when you're on the field, you see just how fast everything is. But even if you're in the stands, you don't pick up on it as if you're like, right there on the sideline. The closer you are, the better you see how all that speed.
You from the first section of any Steeler game in Heinz Field, you can get a good feel. I didn't want to be on the sideline. I never pursued another sideline pass.
Yeah.
It was too jarring for me because it was again, football wasn't my game.
Right.
Maybe if I was a football enthusiast, I would have loved every second of it.
Sure.
It was so overly, and he was my friend. Like I had to build this relationship with him.
Yeah,
I'm like, my friend just got
Plastered
out there, man. Like I was, like,
and that's just a play. That's just a play.
one play.
That's a play.
So then I was there was and I won't out him here. Real nice guy that I ended up working for USA Waste for a while in the '90s, the waste company, and there was a Steeler from the late '80s, early '90s. Not a popular Steeler, but he was there a couple of years. He was a tight end. He ended up working for us. And I got to know him pretty well. He told me that that the hitting back then even was so ferocious that those players, I mean, they would hide a lot of injuries. Like, and this player told me, I went in there and I was pissing blood at halftime, and I said, "What did you do?" He goes, "Didn't do a damn thing. I went back out and played." And luckily for me, whatever was wrong with me corrected itself.
Oh, God.
But he goes, "There was no." I said, "You weren't going to get medical treatment for that?" He goes, "No." He goes, If I go on that DL, I'm a marginal player. I may never resurface back again.
Right.
And I'm not. This isn't me being with my bravado. This is how the mentalities of most of these marginal players. They're not going to report injuries.
Right.
Because once it hits
It's insane.
Yeah, but I mean, him saying that was so jarring to me. Like, wow, this is the part of the game that and I'm sure baseball has their own stories.
Sure.
Part of the game that you just never see as a fan. Like, this is really
Right.
I mean, there's a lot riding.
It's a brutal game.
Well, it's always been a
It is
brutal
a brutal
game.
game.
I mean, the black and blue division in the 1960s, the Vikings, the Bears, the Lions, and the Packers, they were known to just go out and kill each other.
And there was no padding then. I mean,
Not really.
I mean,
Dick Butkus.
Not like
Can you
now, man.
imagine? Can you imagine Dick Butkus breathing down you as you're like running the football? You know he's going to crush you. You just know you're going to get it.
Who is that? There's that famous picture of like Frank Gifford, like all crumpled up, and the guy like standing over him. Chuck, was that Bednarik? Who was that?
May have been from the Eagles.
But he hit him so hard that he was out for like a year.
Yes, he was. Yep.
Man.
And then there's another pitcher, New York Giant quarterback, Y.A. Tittle. This was
he's
taken at
bloody.
Pitt Stadium when the Steelers were playing at Pitt Stadium. Hit his helmet off, and blood is coming from his forehead. I mean, that game's always been very vicious.
Yeah, it's just, and again, I don't know how you corral something like that. And again, this is what makes our major sporting events, the four biggies in the States, amazing because they're so different, isn't it? It's amazing.
Yeah, they are all
the
very,
rules,
very different.
The tactics, the strategies, the
Yeah.
equipment. It's just
Yeah.
It's fun going to other countries too, back when we were able to do that and unearth those like local sports there and just be completely befuddled at what's going on and what's it's very cool. Just
once you
random.
get past the soccer, you mean like
so last
like
time
cricket?
last time I was in Budapest, they had like the World Cup of handball was being held there. And so just to take that, it's just cool just to take in different sports, and I love sports. It's
Did
just,
you ever
yeah.
see cricket played?
I've seen the
I've seen
pitches,
it practiced live, but not played live.
I've never seen it played live. Like when we were in England, we went to a sporting goods store, and they have all the cricket equipment. It's actually kind of cool to hold their bats. Their bats are so they look like an oar,
Okay.
And you got to take your boat out on the Ohio River, and you're going to be using it to row.
I saw like the Indian national team practicing in Bermuda.
Yeah,
Wow.
India's
That
a
was cool.
It's a big thing in India,
Big in
right?
India.
Huge. Cricket's huge in India.
Pakistan.
I've always been
Lanka.
fascinated with that game. Like, how big is when they say cricket matches? Are there thousands of fans in this?
Oh yes,
There can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when
Yeah.
they play the original style, those matches could last like a week.
When they do their
They came up with like maybe
tests or whatever they call it.
15, 20 years ago, they came up with a game called 2020 that could be played in a day. But the I think it's a test match.
Test match.
Yeah.
They call it test match.
Those could take a week. Oh,
Yeah.
Yes, easily.
How is that game played? Is it a combination like baseball and hockey?
It always
It's
reminds
more
me
like-
of like a rundown.
I mean, your pitcher's the bowler, and he starts way back, and he runs and has all this momentum, and then he throws the ball to bounce, but he throws like he can put spin on it just
Okay.
like pitchers do in baseball.
Okay.
And then the batter, I think he's called the batter. He can hit the ball in whatever direction, and there's no like foul territory. You can have players behind you. You can actually find a way to like tap the ball behind you. It's a skill.
Okay.
And then there's wickets there too. So I think the bowler's job is to hit the wicket, right?
There's that's the little piece of wood that's on top. So he's trying to bounce it to hit the thing off the back, and the
And the
batter's trying to protect
job
it.
is to protect that wicket.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean they score runs. They call them innings.
I have to YouTube this because it's a thing. I
And
know
then
it's a thing.
the batters like alternate sides, like they
Yes,
run between
yeah,
the
they-
two
they-
when the ball's
yes.
hit. I've got friends that
There's
are
got
really
to be
big cricket
gambling
fans,
on it,
and
right? There's got to be
Of course,
gambling on it.
yes.
Gambling on
there
everything.
is.
Are you kidding? It's gambling on
They're
everything.
gambling on darts. If you
there's
look
gambling
seriously,
on
if you look at
everything.
FanDuel, if you have a
That's
FanDuel
nuts.
account, it's just you can bet on darts for goodness sakes.
Well, however,
Snooker.
highlight was when I was a kid. Highlight was a big
Highlight
thing.
is
You would
really
go to
cool.
Miami, and you would that was like a big.
That's still a big sport down there, I think, isn't it?
Is it?
I believe so.
Did
Yeah.
they go and it was a gambling sport, right? There's a lot of money
Probably,
waste on that.
probably.
You can gamble on anything.
Well, yeah. Today you can. Today you can.
I had friends that went down to Peru and they were gambling on cockfighting.
They're allowed to do that down there.
Yes, they are. You can't do that here, but down there they do cockfighting.
Big in Puerto Rico. I tried to take Jamie to one of those. She wasn't on it. I think it would have been cool. Just once.
Yeah,
I don't want to go all the time. I just want to
would
go once.
I would go to a bullfight if I were in Spain. Just
Yeah, it's part of the culture.
it's
I
part of
guess.
the culture, right? Actually, I've always wanted to do the running of the bulls, the San
You
Fermin
know,
Festival.
that's where I draw the line.
I'm not saying I want to run with them. I'll be up on I'll be in a balcony drinking a sangria, watching these crazy guys run down the
Well,
street. These bulls charging at
So
them.
one of the MMA fighters, the UFC fighters, Kama Worthy, he just fought. He's fought a couple times at UFC in the past 6 months. Great guy. One of his bucket list things was to run with the bulls, and his wife was always like, yeah, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
He went and did it. He said he'd never do it again.
No.
Wow.
But he said
That's wild.
He said
I-
it was absolutely, positively horrifying.
Oh,
I have a
course.
friend who did
Yeah,
that.
he's a tip-top,
Yeah,
top,
he's a-
and
he's in
elite,
good
elite
shape, yeah.
athlete, man. But
Yeah. No, a friend of mine did that back in the late 1980s, and he was gored.
Oh my
Not
God.
severely, but he was still gored. He got hit. Yep.
same thing with like jumping out of an airplane.
No,
Like jumping out of a
no.
perfectly good airplane.
No.
with just
Not me.
there's some things in life are just not worth the risk.
No, not doing that.
Guys, I appreciate this. Was this fun?
Heck yeah.
Absolutely. Good time.
Yeah,
Heck yeah.
we can do this again.
Yeah, for sure.
We can do this again. I really
Yep.
appreciate it.
This is a blast. We got to talk music next time.
There we
we
go.
might. We
Yeah.
might. All right, guys. Appreciate it.
All right.
All right,
Thanks, Eric.
friends.
Thank you, Eric.
Take care.
We're out.
Hello, you're listening to the Eric McKenna Project.